Oh,
And
buddy.
we are live. Hello. I'm here with Joe again. This is our second episode of the new series we're doing. We're going to be here every Wednesday and Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, West Coast
Yeah.
time.
And I
And
just updated my headline so that you can see what my YouTube handle is instead of that joke vaccine taste tester, Mr. Accord, for folks who
here,
don't
I
know
will
yet.
drop your channel as well.
Yeah.
Because Joe is going to be talking about a topic today that he's going to do a stream on tomorrow on his channel and go into more depth. So we're going to introduce it today. Um, the reason Joe and I are doing this
Hmm.
is we started talking and we realized we had very similar experiences with
Hmm.
the workforce and kind of trying to make a life for ourselves in modern society, both as men and as neurodivergent people. And we kind of both given up really and decided we're gonna go like forge our own path. And that's a lot easier to do when you have other people to do it with, or other people in similar situations that you can kind of that just kind of understand what what we're trying to do. So that's what brought us together, and what we're hoping to do is talk about that journey and find other people that are in similar situations that want to contribute whatever skills and talents they have to the we're trying to build a community within a community, and a community specifically to support people like ourselves that are trying to make a living outside of the ordinary corporate workplace. As a neurodivergent person, I find it very difficult to integrate to the neurotypical norms that the modern workplace is centered around. Code switching is what we call it in the autism community. I have a hard time code switching to norms other than my own. Um, Being a male, I can switch to neurotypical male norms a lot easier than I can female norms. And the modern workplace seems to becoming more and more feminized. And the workplace norms are not only neurotypical, but they're a female neurotypical, and that increases the challenge of integrating. And so I've just given up. I've had enough negative experiences, enough frustrations. Joe has had some of his own, and that's both driven us to this path of autonomy, self empowerment, self employment. And so that's kind of what this series is devoted to. And I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to talk about McDonald's, I believe. What's going on with McD's, McDonald's?
Well, it's connecting to what we were talking about last time. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and I think that'll make it much clearer for us here. So what's the right one here? We want to click
Let's take a look.
Chrome. All right. And all right, so let me go ahead and show this. It's not playing the
This is so
sound
meta.
from the stream, is it? But I hope it's not like taking the sound from the stream because I've got the Chrome browser up. But if it
Let's see. Just
is,
make sure your YouTube this clip is turned up loud enough. Ooh,
yeah, yeah. Ooh. All right, it should be good. It's all the way up. Okay, so I'm gonna play this, and this is you coming back from McDonald's with your fries
oh, this is the
after
Friday.
yeah after seeing um uh Trump
Work the
go to
fry
McDonald's and
station.
being excited by it, and you basically said, "Oh, this is a great McDonald's commercial."
Yeah.
And then the panel got into a more extended conversation about McDonald's afterwards. But I wanted to highlight what I noticed here at the end.
Oh, no sound.
No sound.
No sound.
No
Um,
sound. Okay, let me see if
that
I can
happens before.
fix
Are
it.
you sharing a window, a separate window, or are you sharing a
I,
browser tab?
I'm sharing my Chrome window. Yeah.
Because if you share a separate window, I think you have to set it to share sound as well or something.
Okay. Let me do that real quick then. All right. So I'm gonna. All right. Let me try. All right. So say click stop share to start.
And if that doesn't work, you can just send me the link and I can play it.
Okay. I'll try the tab then. I'll just have to switch my tabs, I guess.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully this one works.
And that's the
Is it
official.
cow
Yeah.
paste, like chicken nuggets?
A cow paste?
A what?
Oh, are you talking about what the chat's saying? Or
No, I think that was from the video.
okay,
We
okay,
have sound.
Kinda, I think. When
okay,
you
good.
That
think
was the
about
other me. That wasn't
it, they
me.
use a lot of cows to make a whole bunch of meat. This kind of
Yeah,
makes
those French fries were over $5. Yes, this is he's right about that. $5 for I could buy like a whole lunch for $5 at the grocery store. There is a lag on it.
Yeah, I thought those were
Okay.
overpriced a bit, man. You only
They were worth it.
what was a large that was that much?
Hmm.
That
And
was
Friday is free Friday with the app. I'm just not sure I want to put McDonald's app on my phone yet.
I heard you.
Okay, and so he said that the fries were, overpriced. You were kind of
Well,
surprised that it cost so
I,
much,
I don't
and then
know. I don't know about overpriced. They were more expensive than probably 25 years ago when I bought my last fry. But I don't
certainly we
know if that
noticed that.
means by today's standards that would make them overpriced.
But I'm sure you remember how last time, so shortly after you brought that up, some other folks came in the panel, Mike came in even, and everyone talked about how food prices were much higher than before, and
Yeah, I
so
definitely noticed that.
and some people were even complaining, that McDonald's is, like wrongfully, jacking up their prices. So yeah, I wanted to share this as well. So um, I think a lot of people have seen this chart. This is the decline of the dollar ever since we got on our current monetary policy, which was basically when the Federal Reserve was created. And so,
Was
as
that
we can see,
1913? Is that when we
yeah,
went to fiat, or did that come later?
no, so fiat happens. It happened temporarily in the 30s, and then it happened once and for all in the 70s once we would switch to the
Oh,
petrodollar.
okay. I didn't
Um,
realize
so yeah,
that late.
and yeah, it was Nixon that finally put that in place. And but we did Roosevelt Franklin D. Roosevelt briefly took us off the gold standard as part of his response to the Great Depression. So you see here, a lot of it happened very sharply, um, like almost half as much in the decade that followed. Um, Likely related somewhat to their policy toward inflation, but also I think World War One is happening here, so you have to take that into account.
Now that's the
Um,
dollar becoming less valuable.
yeah,
It's
so so
dropping
uh,
in value.
so a $100 bill between here and here is basically worth $50. It has $50 worth of purchasing power. We'll say this is the thing I want to bring up, right? Because it's purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. Inflation is the loss of your purchasing power. When they train us as investment advisors in finance, um, inflation risk and purchasing power risk are equivalent things, and they teach us to understand what this risk is and know how to identify it for when we're talking to clients.
And it just
This
means you're going to need more dollars to buy the same thing that you could have
basically,
at a different point in time.
because the Fed has told us we are going to aim for slight inflation in the long run. So that's when people say inflation is 2 to 3% usually. Historically, that is what it's averaged out to, but that's because that's what the Fed is seeking. The Fed is seeking it. I'll
So
go
they
into more
have an ability to control inflation.
yeah, through the way they handle interest rates and other things. So they're
And
aiming
is
for it.
inflation something that is just organically happens in an economy? It's not avoidable.
It
It could just
can
be managed.
it can be managed. It can happen organically as well. Deflation, which is the increase of purchasing power of a currency, can also happen. The Fed is specifically trying to prevent deflation from ever happening. Um, and I can go into more detail on why that is. But basically, this is the long-term trend. Now, none of us were alive during all this craziness here, right? So let me just zoom in and like as much as possible. Oops. And we still got this. Did it not mess up?
I see the little Fed logo, but that's the only
Okay.
part of the chart.
All right. So let's
You
let's
have it
just look
zoomed
at.
in to the $100 mark.
Okay. Okay. That's what you see.
Yeah.
All right. Do you see it with how it's moved?
No.
No, okay, gotcha. Well, I wanted to zoom in onto because if I zoom in all the way, it'll show it to where
Are you able to drag it around? If you zoom, are you able to drag it around?
it lets me scroll, but I guess it's not sharing the scroll part. So I can scroll it, but it's
Because when I show those charts and I zoom in, I just kind of drag it around the screen. It lets me move the chart around.
yeah, it's not letting me do that because this is an image.
Oh,
In
I
any
see.
event, if I wanted to zoom in about where it was since the late 80s, early 90s, the dollar's fallen by about another half of its value since
Is
then as
that
well.
after the oil crisis? I was alive during the oil crises. I remember the gas lines.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
was after the oil crisis.
after all of that.
Inflation, yeah, after all of that, its dollar's about half what it was basically from when I was born, which was 91.
In '83, it looks like it's about 90% less.
Yeah, and so oh, I see what happened here. Is it zooming now?
Yeah, now it's doing. Yeah.
I accidentally duplicated the tab. Okay, so let's go ahead and just look at this. So right, if we zoom in on this, we can see this is still pretty substantial, right? From here to here. This is
From
quite a
where to
bit
where?
down. From
From the
here to
'80s to the
here.
.com.
Right. Yeah. This is if we just sort of follow a straight line
It still
here,
seems
right?
low. It's like 10% of what the purchasing power was
It's definitely more than
from the
that.
start.
It's about half if we look from here. Maybe just under half.
Wait, I'm
And so
confused because
if we look from here, so this is
half of I'm looking at the starting point where it was 100, at where the Fed was created. So when you say
oh,
half,
is it not zooming in on this one?
what I see Trump tax cuts and the .com bubble.
Okay.
But what is it half of? Because it's not half of
So
100.
all right. So I'm talking about from where it starts here around 93. If you look at around where 93 is, it goes down to about
About
um,
by the .com bubble, it's about half of where it was in
yeah,
'93.
yeah,
Okay.
and you got to keep in mind that I don't think this goes quite to the current day. So there's a bit more of the higher inflation we've seen lately that needs to be taken into account. But yeah, the dollar is about half of where it was since I was. So it's $1 has the purchasing power of 50 cents now. Since 91. So
Are you
it's
talking about now at the 2019 or the 2003 mark?
so I'm talking about now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So basically, what you could have bought for 50 cents around the time I was born, on average, you'd have to spend $1 for it, right? And that's averages. It's not every single individual good. There are some things that are more expensive, right, by multiples. So some people see that through McDonald's, for example.
And we want to compare it to like the '90s, not necessarily the
Yeah,
1913s.
exactly. And so
Okay.
this is just a thing to keep in mind because when you do investing and when you're managing your risk, this is one of the most important risks to manage that most people don't think about until suddenly they're like, "Oh wow, 30 years ago, it cost this much." But by then, 30 years have passed. You can't get that back, and it creeps up on you. And this is what makes it so dangerous is the creeping nature of it. So, um, one reason why stocks are helpful is it will protect you against this. I'm just going to highlight this real quick because some people might remember this. Black Monday, it was a big stock market crash in 1987. If you look here, the S&P 500 was at about it peaked just over 330, and at the pit of the crash, it was down to like
Wait,
230.
where are you looking?
Oh, let me switch to this tab. I got to remember to
Oh,
do that.
okay.
You see this now?
Yeah.
So we see here it peaks around 330. It crashes to just below 230. So it's about a
And
third of
this
its
is
value
'87.
lost. Yeah, this is the span
Ooh,
of a few weeks that all this happened. So
I don't remember that at all.
yeah. Well, you would have been what, a teenager at the time, maybe?
No, I was a freshman in college, leaving
Okay.
high school, entering college.
Okay. Yeah. So as you can see here, this is a big drop. I mean, again, about a third down. This is what scares a lot of people about stocks and investing. Is in the short term this can happen, but the
And that
long
was
term,
in October alone, that 1 month.
yeah, like late September into October, it was a span of a few weeks and terrified some people. Um, but if you look at the long term trend here, I'm going to switch to another thing. This is the S&P 500 over time, right? So you see Black Monday, like I guess right here. Um, it's compared to what the market has done since then. Right? If you're so basically, this is around the time pretty much all the baby boomers would have been in the workforce. If they just let their 401ks ride, they're fine, right? I mean, even if you look from here to 2009, when the market is in the, it's still above. And then again, even if you like started work here, you started your putting money in your 401k here right before the crash. If you just kept moving along, you're still more than ahead. And this is almost like the inverse of the first chart I saw. I mean, just look at the shape of this and go back to this. Look at the shade of this. It's almost like they're flipped versions of each other, right? These are the long term um, sort of anti-relationships that they have with each other.
And is that coincidence, or is there a true relationship?
It's not. It's not. There is a relationship. So some of this here is the fact that as the dollar inflates, the people who set prices are capturing the value of those price increases, and so that's reflected in the average of the S&P 500.
So the money that's being taken away from the dollar is going into these stocks.
Well, it's
profits.
What being an owner of a business does, because when you own stocks, you are an owner, is it gives you the ability to benefit from price increases, right? It's businesses that have to price things higher. That's how, inflation is basically businesses setting a higher price for things. So if you're an owner of a business, you get to ride that and have it compound into your wealth. And in addition to that, whatever extra profits the businesses realize through their organic improvements, right? If they find ways to reduce costs or increase output, that will also help them. And so this is what protects you from inflation. I'm going to talk more about it in my full episode, but I just wanted to present these visuals today so that people can understand. If you think about where McDonald's was maybe 10 years ago and you're kind of annoyed by the price movements, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to be feeling that 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at it again and be like, wow, in 2024, McDonald's was this and now it's this, right? If you want to be in a better mood about it in 2034, that's why you start now. So you just got to think, of your 2034 self that wants to be able to just enjoy simple things like McDonald's and not feel like it's eating at your wallet. You take the step starting today. Even if you don't have a lot of cash now, you can start putting it to work and let it take advantage of this long-term compounding.
So the solution to inflation, to that dollar dropping, is to become a business owner through investing.
Yeah, so the individual
because that
solution
counteracts the effects of the inflation.
Right. What the individual can do is they can put their money to work and they can protect themselves from inflation over time. Because again, I'll just wrap up here. Go back to this tab. The dollar is constantly in a crash. These were crazy times. The first half of the 20th century had a lot of shit going down, right? Like geopolitical instability that's causing things. But after we win World War II and we become the global superpower and we have more control of international trade and everything, the dollar is just in a slow crash. I mean, look from here, Bretton Woods Agreement, which is roughly before the end of World War II.
Is that when they went fiat?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, World War II is when the geopolitical situation stabilizes, and basically things are on more of a global peace situation, and there's not nearly as much disruption as the first half of the 20th century. And so when we see that, we can see the dollar is effectively in a constant crash. It's just a very slow one.
Wait, let me see. Hang on, because I see. Yeah, because before that it goes up. So it goes.
And the only reason it really went up is because the Great Depression happened, and so that was an unusual event, making more value for the dollar. And I can talk more about that, about why the Fed likes to avoid deflation.
And Bretton Woods was when the world switched to the U.S. dollar.
I don't remember all the specifics of it, but that's just an important moment. But it's not really key to the point I'm trying to make for right this moment. the dollars, but we see that the Fed is following through on its promise. It wants a little bit of inflation, and this inflation compounds over time, and your dollar is constantly going down. So this is what we do to keep up with it and even get ahead of it. Is
And why does the Fed want this?
I'll say more in detail in the longer term. That's going to a rabbit hole.
Okay. Can you give us a sentence?
Um, the Fed wants this because they want to incentivize spending
Oh, okay.
while keeping prices mostly stable.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And with that, I've said my bit.
Okay, so invest, buy stocks, own businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That comes to do that, you need money.
Mm-hmm.
And for people like us who are having the frustrations in the workforce that we're having, how do we get that money? We need alternatives to getting that money. So you and I have kind of taken risk. We've opted to do risk management by taking risk to increase our chances of getting that money through our own efforts. And we may be successful, we may not, but it's the decision we've made. That's kind of what this stream is for.
Yep.
What we need to get creative, and we need to find other people to figure out how to get us some of that money so that we can invest.
Right. And so that's going to vary from person to person. Like you and I obviously have our own individual skills that we've been able to leverage online to help us. It also helps me that when I was traditionally employed, I saved like a dog. I built up a portfolio, and it provides me extra income as a buffer in addition to what I do. So right, I'm kind
So
of
you're already at the investing phase. You have your
yes,
business, your stakes in the different businesses.
right, and I'm doing what I do just so I can continue to increase my cash flow. No reason for me to sit on my hands just because I have a somewhat decent portfolio for a person my age.
Right.
And so and it makes me a better investor, right? So like actively working in this stuff is stimulating my mind to think, look at different investments, learn more. Um, so it's providing me the right incentives to be better. Um, I think for a lot of folks who may be watching and who may be a bit younger, um, hopefully if they're younger and they're ahead of some of this, I mean, in any age, this is good to do, but I think the thing with young people is it's this catch-22. They have the most runway of time because if you look at what the long-term trend is there, time is important. And time will work against you in terms of inflation, but it can work for you if you save your money and let it compound at a rate that's usually better than inflation. So if you want to just remember this real quick, the average annual return of the market. So we're talking the S&P 500 basically, but other market indexes get similar averages. Is at 10%. So if inflation is 2 to 3% usually, and the average return on the market is 10% over any like long-term period that you quote, generally speaking, you have a 7 to 8% gain of real
Are we
wealth
talking a year or 10 years?
a year. So
Okay.
if you compound it, you get a little over a double your
Right.
money
That makes
in a
sense.
decade. I think at 10% you double your money in 7 years, and so it's a little bit more than that in 10.
So you're
And
staying ahead of the inflation that way by
yes,
quite a significant margin.
yes. But the thing is, what scares people is that screenshot I showed you of 1987. That terrifies people. And if you're a young person, it can be especially intimidating. But uh, again, like any baby boomer entering the workforce, getting a 401k in the 80s, if they had just ignored that and just continued to put money into their 401k in like an S&P 500 index fund, um, they would not feel the difference by the time they retired in most cases. So, um,
And so
that's
their
why it's
dollar
important.
would have more or less the same spending power as when they started.
Well, they would have more purchasing power because they would have beat
Right.
inflation. Because they'd be compounding the money they put in.
Is that contributing to the inequality gap? We see that chart where the
Somewhat, yeah, because a lot of the wealth goes to businesses. Businesses are compounders of wealth. That's what they do. That's why people start businesses, is so they can grow their wealth. Like people would not start a business if they believed that on
well,
average the business will make you poorer, right?
do you think that's the because I started one so I can help people honestly, so I can get my services to the people who need it. It wasn't really profit motive. I thought it was reasonable to make a living at it if I could, but my main purpose was more creative purpose than profit motive.
Yeah, I also think if it produced $0 for you, you wouldn't do it because you starve to death.
Oh,
Then.
it
Unless
is.
you're
It's producing less than $0. I'm in debt as a result of doing this. So, but it's I'm looking long term.
okay. Well, if you're thinking that it'll ultimately work out, that's one thing. I think if you are saying, well, I want to do this and I don't care if I go destitute, that's another. Some
Well, I'm
people
not
may
saying
be like
that,
that.
but
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to have to make a profit at some point, or it's not worth it. But part of the risk is taking the hit in the beginning, so I can get the service off the ground and distribute it to the people who need it, and hopefully the profit will come as part of that down the road.
Yeah. And I
But the
would just say
motive for
that
starting it was not to, what did you say it does to wealth? Businesses,
it compounds your wealth.
yeah, the purpose was definitely not to compound my wealth. It was just to pay my bills and hopefully help people in the process. Actually, it was to help people and hopefully pay my bills in the process.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm speaking just generally here. Not everybody who does a given action is doing it for identical reasons as the average, but like for me, I obviously have other motives. Like I could have done a 9 to 5 job and gotten paid more while still doing my own portfolio, but for similar reasons, I chose not to. So
What were some of your motives? Because we're outliers, I imagine that our motives are not going to track with the mainstream, like most of
I
them.
wanted more autonomy. And I wanted more control of my free time, and
Oh, that's
ultimately,
yeah.
I think that's what being able to invest and not only keep up with inflation but beat it lets us do is it gives us that control of our time so that our future self can achieve a lot more than we could have ever done otherwise. And people who are regular savers starting early, even before they're of the usual retirement age, um, can have enough means saved up to do this. So as far as like what can individual people do, um, the first thing is before you can make more money, you got to be frugal, right? So you just got to learn to like what are my means, get an idea of like what are you spending on, and how much of it is truly essential, how much of it isn't. That's going to vary from person to person. And then after you've limited your expenses, then it's a lot easier to figure like, well, what can I do to increase my income? Because the great thing about lowering expenses is it's like an income increase, but it's not taxable because you don't actually get more income. So whatever the tax rates will be, lowering your expenses doesn't lead to more income. For business, that's different because you get to write off your expenses. So, but for an individual, that's not necessarily the case. So anything you can do to lower your groceries, and we talked a bit about that during the McDonald's thing. Is if you don't like how much McDonald's costs, then you go there less and spend less money on it and buy
Yeah,
cheaper
that
food from
is
the
going to
store.
limit the amount of times that I go there.
Like one thing I often eat is I'll just like eat peanut butter and oatmeal mixed together, and that's very very cheap food. I don't do it all the time, but it's just something that lowers my average cost over time. It does not cost me a lot to buy it up and then slowly eat it over time, and it's not exactly not particularly bad for me either. So it checks a lot of boxes. Are a lot of people willing to do that? As at least consistently enough that over time the savings add up, and therefore the compounding adds up. Yeah, that depends. But that's what separates um, people who are able to get to a point of autonomy and freedom from those who aren't. It's are they willing to make those sacrifices? And we talked about before commitment and consistency, right? We talked about it more of an interpersonal social thing. It's but people have to do it with themselves. They have to
Right.
keep promises to themselves. Like remember RFK Jr. was talking about how he felt during his drug addiction days. He said, I would tell myself I'm going to stop today, and then I'd be shooting up in the afternoon. I was unable to keep promises to myself, and I hated that. And so he was talking about that in the context of addiction, which is a pretty severe thing. But our money habits are also one of those things. And we don't necessarily grow up with the best money habits because money feels like such an abstract thing a lot.
Hmm.
Uh,
Especially to poor people.
Yeah, and people don't even see it as a long-term thing. They see it as something that comes and goes, and it's it's constantly. It's like they're constantly being um, passed around like a hacky sack. They don't really get to stabilize things as much as possible. But that's what the individual has to do is they figure out how do I stabilize this as much as possible. And you start that by cutting your expenses.
Well, creative freedom and autonomy is definitely one of the main motivations for self-employment as opposed to trying to go back into the workforce, which I
Mm-hmm.
could probably generate more income quickly in the short term doing that, but I'm not willing to pay the trade-offs that it would require in the loss of autonomy and creative freedom. So you've cut your expenses, but now people still need money. There are still bills to pay. So cutting the expenses only goes so far. And it seems like unless you have a trust fund, the two paths forward are employment or self-employment. And
Mm-hmm.
so for a lot of us that struggle with employment and choose self-employment, that's kind of what I think I'm trying to explore the potential of this community and this stream for, like this series that we're doing.
Well, one thing I will say about online is it's really opened the possibilities for um, content creation and freelance work. And so I've talked about this plenty of times. Um, my main source of income, in addition to my portfolio, is the freelance stock analysis I do on Seeking Alpha. And I make at least a couple thousand each month doing that. And so it's great because I'm basically doing research and I'm getting paid to do it now. So the research is helpful to me anyway as an investor, and I'm capturing additional value by doing that. So
Hmm.
other people may have skills that um, they can provide to folks on a freelance basis online without getting caught up in some of the, especially if you're putting it in the context of people who are neurodivergent or atypical in some way and probably don't fit well into a standard workplace environment. Right? We're talking about interpersonally. Uh, the nature of online freelance work is that it's very impersonal, and it's very to the point. And all you got to do is just find the people who need something to get done. And there are people who will even pay for simple things. Like I made an extra 1,250 this year. I actually did the math; it came to that amount exactly. For a friend who just needed me to do some, like, basically some tasks and favors for her that were related to her business, and I had the time, and because I was still early in my Seeking Alpha process, and so and I said, well, I might as well do a little something. And she paid me 25 an hour for it. And there
And
there are
was this
people,
in person task or online stuff?
mostly online stuff, so just
Okay.
like editing
So
things
part
or
of the problem is distribution. Like how do you, one of the things I do in my work is helping people to identify their strengths and build on those strengths. And one way to build on those strengths is to leverage them financially. But the problem with that is once you identify the strengths, is getting them to the people that need what you offer, and that's distribution. Do you have any insight into how to connect these amazing services that we all have to offer with the people that might want to take advantage of them?
well, I think a lot of these folks often themselves are networkers. They're influencers. They're active in online spaces. They're active on places like X. So
Well,
I
the
think,
Nexus is part of that's
yeah,
intended. Intended to be a network.
like there are people who will post on X and they'll basically say, "Hey, I need someone to do this. We'll pay 25 an hour for it, 30 an hour for it." These people exist,
How do
and
you find those posts? What would you search for?
uh, they just come up in my feed
Oh, I
sometimes.
never see them.
And so I think there's ways to actively look for them. I haven't really had
Okay.
to do that,
I
but
wonder if, like, I might even create in the Discord like a jobs channel or opportunities channel, and people can post stuff like that when they come across them, and other people might it might help
it's
some of us.
possible that my algorithm on feeds like that have been influenced by the contacts I have online. So who I'm following, who are my friends, and therefore people connected to them are also likely to be those types of folks, and it just simplifies it for me. But even if you can't start, making a little bit extra money this day, those are the kinds of seeds you can plant. Is like find the people in online places who are doers, who are creating things,
Yeah,
network with
where do you
them.
find those people?
Um,
I've been doing this for 5 years at
so a
least.
lot
I
of it,
found.
a lot of it for me personally, like if we talk about that friend who was actually paying me $25 an hour. And again, this was maybe for 2 or 3 hours of work per week for early part of this year. I got to know her through the stuff I did in the intellectual dark web, right? So because I was
Okay.
constantly
And that was
networking and
Reddit
doing stuff.
mostly.
Yeah, and that wasn't even me trying to make money at the time, but it was me being active. It was me being involved in something. It was me, and to the extent that I did it well. I did it honestly, and the long-term relationships I formed from that, long-term contacts, I've managed to keep, and we still have ways of being helpful, useful, and supportive to each other because of that.
So you weren't necessarily marketing yourself. You were just doing what you do, and somebody noticed it and approached you and said, "Hey, could you do this thing for me?"
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily marketing myself. Sometimes I was even trying to help market other people. Like I would try to get people to share their content in the subreddit if I thought it would be good. And so, um, there's a lot of seeds of goodwill that were planted in the process. And so, if you just are quietly in your own shell between your work shifts and you're not planting seeds to be able to leverage them at some point in the future. All right. So if we think about like
I can
that,
think of a lot of autistic people that might be in that situation.
yeah. All right. So let's go back to the concept of compounding, right? That's social compounding, right? Um, if you could, to the extent that you could quantify your social standing into units, right? That would be difficult to do, but we can at least think about it abstractly. Um, I have more social compounding that's occurred over time from when I started in the IDW stuff. And that whole thing kind of started in 2017 when people like Jordan Peterson, um, uh, started becoming popular, and other podcasters and speakers and interviewers associated with the things he was talking about then got big. There's a lot more I can do online compared to in 2016, 2017 because I was consistent at it and because I was always like looking for stuff. If I had just been a guy who was like gonna play Hearts of Iron 4 by myself for like a 6-hour session in an evening, um, unless you're gonna like make Hearts of Iron 4 content and upload it to YouTube and stuff, that's not really helping you. That is the thing. It's like when you're doing stuff, you got to think. So I obviously had some interest in the IDW stuff. I thought it was important. I thought it was at least fun discussion, right? But I was always doing it in a way in which I could leverage it into another opportunity. Sometimes I was doing this consciously, and sometimes it was just an intuitive thing that worked out. But people have to sort of take an inventory of, first we talked about like what their expenses are, but then also what are the things that I'm doing, and are they capturing as much value for me and my future self as possible? And a lot of things, I think the internet really makes this possible in ways that weren't true before. Is uh, the networking power it creates means that you can monetize almost. I'm amazed at like I don't watch traditional shows, and when I say traditional shows, I even mean things that are on streaming platforms, basically, or like what the corporate YouTube channels would allow on YouTube. Um, you know, only thing I really watch on Netflix, for example, might be like really old things that just got licensed on there, or historical dramas. But that's about it. And so I'm not gonna watch like the latest NBC sitcom. I'm not gonna watch like any of that, you know, mainstream media primetime stuff. Not interesting to me. It's the same recycled stuff. There's nothing new about it or interesting. But what is truly novel is the user-driven content on platforms like YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, like so I've been watching like over the last couple days some streams of Mario Party 2 and Mario Party 3, right? I'm not going to watch a football game. I don't really like American football that much. Actually, I've never really have. I'm one of those oddities, right? But I did really enjoy Mario Party 2 and 3 as a kid, and I still like them as an adult because they're extremely interesting games, and I can see like a full room of people. It's a 4-player game playing it, and there's hundreds of channels that do it, and I can there's even a channel devoted to it called Mario Party TV. I love that channel. Um, and like this is way more interesting to me. And a lot of these guys, like Mario Party TV, has been active on YouTube for a little more than a decade. Initially, they were not monetizing, but nowadays they actually can make a little money doing it. They have enough subscribers to be monetized now. In some of their streams, I see that they get super chats. Right? They planted these seeds. Right? They were taking something that they liked, and they were using it to capture value. And again, it's not a thing that will immediately improve overnight. But in the course of a few years, you'd be surprised at uh, the kind of differences that can be achieved. Even my job at that law firm, if we just go back to traditional employment, uh, I met the head attorney of that firm through a volunteer organization in my town. And I had worked with him for about 3 years up to that point. Yeah, 2 or 3 years. And so, having worked with him in that, it was just easier to ask for a job and see if he was hiring at that point, right? I did not imagine that I was ever going to stumble into that opportunity, right? But that's the thing is you gotta be active. You got to be planting these seeds of social capital so that you can compound your social wealth, which you can then leverage into actual financial opportunities. So even if you're really unusually like neurodivergent, the internet really strips away a lot of the baggage of that because you can just keep things dry and intact, and the people are out there, and you can even connect with other people who are neurodivergent and aren't going to hold it against you as much. And you know, some of these people will be able to connect you with things, but it's up to you to figure out what are your strengths.
Well, you've
Yeah.
seen the panelverse. Like, how
Mhm.
many of these people? What are the chances you think of social compounding happening with this crowd?
Well, if we focus on the drama part, not very much because the whole point there seems to be social rifts. So, and monetizing like people's misfortune or something. But if we focus on the better parts, I mean, there's some interesting people here. There's some smart folks. There are folks
Well,
who.
that's what we're trying to attract,
Mhm.
with at least with this sub community.
I think
So I guess yes, this is an attempt to socially compound on a like a
I,
with on a niche level within the larger community.
I think what we need to see is for folks to sort of start saying like, well, here's what I'm good at, and just see what they bring to the table. Uh, what they're prepared to do with it that they're not currently doing, and that's what the
That's the idea
individuals
of the
watching have to
Nexus. Like
do.
I want them to come and hitch their wagon up to this. They're invited to, at least as an opportunity to bring your strengths, bring whatever you do, connect it with what we're doing, and see what forms as a group. See what we create together, because we can all benefit from drawing on each other's skills. It's like
Mhm.
putting together a party in Dungeons and Dragons or a band or something like that. That's what we're looking for. Specific strengths and talents that could contribute to a larger group or community goal that we all benefit from.
Right. So
And I've been doing this for 5 years, and I haven't compounded shit. I've definitely increased my network by a factor of probably 100 compared to my network in Seattle on the ground. But it has not led to any. I guess I've socially compounded, but it has not led it to any real opportunities. I wish there were like a seeking alpha for people that work in mental health that could do videos instead of write articles, but I don't know if that's out there. I think this platform kind of is that.
well, one thing people can do, I know, is that there are sites where people can blog and make money off of it. Seeking Alpha, I think,
But
is
for
a
those of us who are not writers, that like podcasting or YouTubing is the alternative to that. But
yeah.
people don't pay you to do YouTube videos like they pay you to do articles.
Um, not on this like established platform that basically says we will pay you right now if you write this, which is what Seeking Alpha does. Um, now there may be folks who are interested in supporting a certain type of content if you prove that you can make it. So again, if you're one of those really like shut in Hearts of Iron 4 players, which I know is a certain type of person, um, you can make content of that, and there might be some people who are willing to pay to do that, for example, to see you do that. And you just need to see like, okay, where's this community? Who's interested in this? And start reaching out to that and see who are the people there that are interested, and then which ones have maybe the means and resources to support something. Um, and then see who are people who are always trying to like. One thing you can do, see who's got their own personal podcast and is always talking to people, because those people are going to be networking, and they'll probably be able to connect you with those. Like my friend who was giving me just some little like gig work earlier in the year, she's still like referencing people to me and referring people to me, and it doesn't often lead to things, but it's keeping the door open. There's sort of like this revolving door, and then I do the same for her as I see an opportunity, um, and
The
and
people
what
I know that are always talking to people are the Panelverse people, the drama people. I don't know a lot of mental health channels that are as active as mine
okay
talking about mental health all the time.
okay so
Or,
what
or
I
if they do like little educational segments where they talk into the camera and like present a topic, but it's not this networking type of channel.
so what this might need to suggest is that something about your orientation needs to be recalibrated so that you're naturally drifting, into those circles, right? Less away from the drama locale stuff and more toward
Yeah.
the people who are like people who are excited when they get up in the morning, right? Oh, I'm getting up to do this. If
Yeah, I don't know if those people are on YouTube.
Oh, they're definitely on YouTube,
Or
but
they're
it's
not in
just
this sector. These are not people that seem like they are enjoying their life when they get up in the morning. They seem like
Mhm.
some of those miserable people I've met on the planet. Not my audience, of course, but the Panelverse in general.
Right. Well, it's just the thing is everything you're saying about the panelverse is true of the real world too, right?
Well, that's a debate that people have is how much the Panelverse is reflective of the real world or not. Does it draw a particular type
Well,
that
they exist in
is
the real world. Like you go out in real life, and you can get mugged and meet mean people. You have the
but I think
problem.
not on the concentration and scale that it shows up here. Because they're all in one place here. In the real world, you encounter them, sporadically here and there.
Right? I'm just saying, like we can always say there are people who are gonna be an obstacle or an impediment to something, right? Um, One way that we've like avoided that with like traditional workplaces and HR cultures, we've aimed for self-employment, right? Um, and so then we just have to figure, okay, within this online space, um, what are the kind of personalities we need to seek? So I have talked a bit about it, right? Like my friend I mentioned before, she and I first met because I tried to do a podcast for that IDW community. I only ended up doing like 10 episodes. This was back in 2017, 2018. Um, and she was my first guest. And so I was basically like, hey, I want to have interesting conversations with folks. She was somebody that wanted to do that with folks too. So she naturally stepped forward and we talked about that. Um, so, you have to sort of decide these are the people I want to meet. And then you need to like do things that will inevitably lead to them. I told you before about I had gone on a trip to Wisconsin back in August. Um, the guy I visited, he was my second podcast guest for that little brief series I did. All right, so he was an interesting contact to make. He ultimately, fulfilled a different purpose, but like, uh, these are things that starting long ago built into something where I actually got to meet this guy in person, have a good time, have a good trip. Probably best trip I've ever been on. Um, and But I had to make the decision. I want to try and find people like this. And so I think that's the first step. Is if you don't immediately have ways to start flipping on a money switch, right? You need to lower your expenses, and then if you're looking for like the freelance gig stuff where you'll have the flexibility and not any of this the sandbagging of workplace culture, start looking use the internet to find people online that'll do that. And got to be looking for people who are doers, and then you got to be a doer yourself. Yeah, you got to be willing to keep up with it.
Well, I'm definitely a doer, but I'm not finding the other doers.
You don't find them, and no, the majority of people are not doers, right? So, um, um, a lot of folks are not going to get anywhere, and they're going to say, "Well, why didn't this work?" And for most of them, the answer is going to be they just didn't do enough. Um, some people will get unlucky, but and that's why, even though they did enough, they just had bad luck. But more people, it's because they didn't even start with the bare minimum of doing the basic things I laid out.
Well, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I have plenty of evidence of me making the same kind of connections you're talking about. So maybe it's just unluck in my part. That's something I'll have to look at, or maybe there's something
Could
about
be a
me.
bit of bad luck, but look, I mean, your YouTube channel has enough subscribers that you can be monetized now, right? And so you've only been at that a short amount of time, but like that's an important milestone. Like some folks, aren't
Oh
even
yeah,
there yet. So
yeah.
like you can have super chats that help you out. Like I can't do that with my channel yet. I need more people to subscribe. Speaking of which, folks, if you haven't
Yeah, I
subscribed to
dropped
me
I
already,
dropped his channel in the chat, and it's also, or it should be in the description. Let me put it in there.
okay, yeah. But yeah, it's like I would love it if I could monetize my YouTube content as well, and then focus like
Yeah.
on alternatives. So when I don't feel like writing something, I can instead make a video. That would be great. So yeah, Dolbez.
And we can open up the panel too if some of you want to
Yeah,
come on and contribute to this topic. I'll
yeah,
drop the
because
link.
we can continue to speculate, but like I think it would be great if other people came on and like our own audience came on and started thinking about like what do I do, what can I do, and how do I make my personal strengths work for me. But yeah,
There you go.
Dolbez
We'll do
could be one.
this is it's a limited open panel. It's if you want to come up and contribute to the topic we're talking about, which
Yeah.
is networking, like self-employment, how just any how to, I guess, up your game.
Hmm.
Dobez is
Hello.
doing it through university currently. Welcome.
Thank you. So, I didn't get the entire conversation from the start, but I must say I really love the suit. I
Oh,
really love it.
don't love it too much, because it's not going to be my natural mode. I can assure you. But I am trying to
You're too much of a Satanist to dress nice
elevate it a
all the
little
time.
bit.
Is that what you're saying?
I would actually, if I could get some cool satanic formal wear, I might do it more consistently.
Do you know? Have you seen videos of Jordan Peterson recently? Like his custom suits, like
Yes, I've
those.
No.
seen.
That feels like a vibe that you'd enjoy.
Let me take a look.
Maybe not the
He's-
biblical themes, but you get what I
he's
mean.
doing psychological archetypes in his suits.
Yeah. Like I really like.
Is
the
that those
loft suit
colored
as well.
suits he wears?
Yeah.
Let me. Yikes! He looks
Those are-
more gay than I do. Okay, I'm going to show you what Dobez is trying to inflict on me right now. I think we have the real Satanist here. Look at this. Although,
Yeah, it's a fire and ice thing, right?
It's awesome. Heaven and hell. I love it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, it's heaven and hell. Okay.
I like this part of the jacket. I would wear something like that.
The other
Yeah,
one-
he's
Okay,
doing
like
the-
a brand, a style brand. I would have to hire a gay or something.
Yeah.
So Dolbez, what do you think? Like specific to you, it kind of fits into what Jeff and I have been discussing for the last like 15 or 20 minutes.
I only arrived like 3 minutes ago, so you have to
Oh, okay.
recap. That's why.
Okay. So the recap is, I started piggybacking off of the last stream Jeff and I did together about inflation and how people were seeing it through McDonald's prices because Jeff got those expensive McDonald's fries after the Trump commercial. Well, not commercial, but the Trump stunt, publicity stunt. And it was $5 for those fries. And people remember when it did not cost that much to buy. It was large fries, but still. And so people were talking about like, oh, why are prices so much, and kind of kvetching about it, about how McDonald's has raised the prices, and the sort of the impact of inflation. And people are feeling inflation a bit more now because it's been higher lately, but it still happens every year, and even a low inflation over time adds up quite a bit. And so, I talked about how if you just one of the reasons I like to talk about investing and press why it's important is people see stock market crashes and they react to that, but the currency is pretty much always going down in value, and they don't react to that because it happens slowly, but it just destroys your wealth. And unless you are saving it and investing it so that it grows at a rate that is at least better than inflation, your wealth disappears. And so then Jeff was like, okay, well, what do people who are just starting on that path do? Like, how do they get the extra money to put aside? Especially, he said, if we're talking about like neurodivergent people who, my channel's oriented to, who might not always fit into traditional workplace as well, but still need ways to do it. So we've talked more about how what the internet allows folks to do is to leverage their talents and their strengths and their competencies, and network with other folks who might have value in them and can do something to support it. So this often shows through in very customized content creation, whether you're a blogger or you make videos or stream like we do. It can even come through. I've often seen through some consulting work. You can be a consultant for almost anything now. And then sometimes you can just do random gig work. There are people who post on social media. I see a lot, like on X. They'll say, "Hey, I need to get this done. We'll pay $25 an hour. Anytime someone needs, I need someone to do it," kind of thing. And maybe only a couple hours a week, but like there are these little things that are just dangling out all the time. And basically, you just have to be able to put yourself in a position to notice these opportunities, meet the right people. But it doesn't come with nearly the same baggage of if you're the limits of a 9-to-5 HR-driven corporate culture. And with that, you have to keep your head down. You have to stay in your lane. You're not allowed to be as creative as much. You can't really flourish as an individual. So people who put themselves in a position to be exposed to those opportunities can potentially increase their earnings given enough time, and then have some extra savings, at least even more savings if they are already able to save some to put away. So what Jeff is interested in is like the people he wants to support, right? Because part of what he thinks is with the men's mental health and neurodivergent mental health support is not just telling people, "Oh, it'll be okay," but actually getting them to realize what is their potential as individuals and to help them flourish.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be okay. I can't guarantee that. But
Yeah,
I can help them could find ways to contribute to the best outcome possible,
Right.
and give themselves the best chance.
Right.
I think
And
one
we can't.
issue, though,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
one issue though is that the internet, at least from my perspective, doesn't feel entirely economically self-reliant in the sense that if people don't get enough money from normal jobs to be able to, donate and give to all of these smaller gigs on the internet, then you can't really survive off the internet. Like, it's still the vast majority of money is generated through the normal jobs, and if inflation ruins their income there, and so they can't spend as much, can't save as much, there isn't as much money going around in all of these internet businesses or the YouTubers. Or like, if you're a YouTuber and you're reliant on ad money, that's safe, generally. Corporations still have money to spend. But on subscriptions from your subscribers, that at least the vast majority of them, they get money. They get their money from the normal market. And so, I don't think it's as disconnected that you can just jump into the internet and can fulfill.
Well, some of us are
can't
willing to
jump
take
in.
that risk.
You can't just jump in, which is why I was having a discussion with Jeff before about how, you want to start exposing yourself to the opportunities, knowing where the people are. And it could take a couple years before you actually have an opportunity to monetize something at a certain minimum that you would actually feel the improvement from that monetizable event. It did not happen overnight with me, but the things that I'm able to do right now, that I can make extra money online, started with me making efforts, building inroads a few years ago. So folks just need to, get into those habits now, and then they'll have opportunities, in the coming years. But if they just continue to just sort of like one thing I said to Jeff was there are people who just might, do a 6-hour video game session by themselves.
Yeah.
And not do it. And the thing is, like, if you're a gamer and that's all you are, right, at the very least, you can network with other gamers and you can make content of your gaming and just expose yourself to folks, right? Capture as much value as possible out of what you do, whatever it is that you do. And this is going to have, not everyone's going to get equal rewards out of this, right? So by studying investing, it is much easier for me to find immediately monetizable opportunities, such as by being a stock analyst, because people want to see stock analysis, and the people who want to see stock analysis already have money to support that.
Exactly.
So, right? So I went into something where even on the low end of that, of the sort of the entry level, you can start getting paid a decent amount up front.
Because
Another
you were
thing,
tapping into a certain market that's already
right?
built up.
All right, but I also did not get there overnight. I spent years learning about investments, and I prepared myself for that opportunity accidentally. Okay.
Yeah,
I was
same
not
here.
planning. I was not planning for this, all right? But I was doing things to take my time and capture as much value as I could from what I do, and it just set me up for this. So what people have to do is whatever their hobbies are, even if it's not something they intend as a career, they just need to think, how do I capture as much value from this as possible? That is what investing is. It's how do I avoid fucking up, which is a risk management, and then the things that are not going to lead me to fuck up. How do I capture as much value from it as possible? And I think, I mean, Jeff, you can tell me, but I would imagine like a lot of your clients that you've supported over the years, maybe one of their issues is they're not proactive enough, and it's easy to get into despondency or complacency than not do anything, and
On their part or on my part?
on their part. And so what you might have to do is sort of get them to realize like what doors are open that they need to walk through, right?
Yeah, that's some of it, I guess.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say most of them are in that despondent state, especially after working with me for a little while.
Maybe not despondent, but even if they're not despondent, right, they could be complacent. They could just like be taking things for granted, and there are just opportunities right in front of them that pass on by and may not return.
No, added to that, I think a large problem is that for the past at least decade, at least there in Norway, their salary has increased faster than inflation. So even if you did nothing, your relative value would go up. And I think a lot of people, at least here, are stuck in that mindset that, well, that's the natural course. It has been this way for 20 years. So why would it stop? But the fact of the matter is that now inflation is increasing faster than salary. And so you are losing value the longer you go without doing some saving methods, be they stock investment or using your money to open other ventures. And so
And
people are kind
welcome,
of stuck in
Omar.
that
I see you
mindset.
brought boobs.
Hey, yeah, man, I wanted to bring some boobs for you, man. How are you?
I'm okay.
Looking sharp in that jacket, man.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Yeah,
What
so
you guys
I think
up to?
that catches you up, Dolbez. So yeah. So Omar, you can maybe pick up what we're onto. It's nice to meet you, by the way. I don't think we've
And
been in
Omar has a
together.
little side hustle of his own with a
Nice to
metal
meet you, man.
detector.
Yes, I'm a treasure hunter.
Oh, okay.
So-
That's something, right? Some people treasure hunt for fun, but if you can monetize it, then all the better. And then you
Oh.
can
Yeah,
make content.
monetize your hobbies.
Right.
Why not? Like, have
You
fun.
could stream yourself treasure
Work shouldn't
hunting.
feel like work.
Yeah, you could
I-
stream yourself treasure hunting. You make a big
do.
find. You put
He
it on
does.
YouTube. Okay, there you go. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you, Omar, for coming here. Is it Omar or
problem.
Omar? Or
Omar.
Omar, okay.
But today we're
Okay.
doing actually have an announcement at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern time zone. Straight Up Metal Detecting is going to be hosting the electric live stream for the Halloween special and stuff with Tripwire.
Ooh.
So if you want to watch that over there, I'll post a link.
This is exactly perfect. I would have never
Yeah,
thought of
I'll
metal
put your
detecting,
channel
but-
in the chat
Okay, cool.
and drop the link in the back, and I'll add it.
No problem. I'm just going to find it.
All
This
right,
is
so-
Fun with Dirt's channel. If you haven't checked him out yet, and welcome Lawyer Chick and Daniel Barry. Good to see you.
Yes, Dolbez, what are some things specific to you that may seem worthless, but if you're really like maximizing your imagination and the tools provided by technology could potentially be of actual material value to you at some point?
Well, for me, the big issue is discipline, you could say. Actually, like I this sounds arrogant, but I know I have enough competence in enough hobbies that I could monetize them if I could have the discipline to do it consistently. Like I really like writing. I've counted it up. The total amount of words I have just in first chapters and prologues is longer than 2 whole novels. It's like I technically like have written 2 whole books, but it's just first chapters and ideas, and I need like what I personally like. What would help me is the discipline, or I don't know, the
What do you
drive
want to
to
write?
keep this consistent.
What do you want to write?
Well, in the early part, it was mainly just fan fictions. You know, I am still very young, so that was the beginning. But then, as I read more Dostoevsky, I got, into more existential literature, and especially after watching a few plays. What do you say? Enemy of the People by Henrik Ibsen, probably the greatest playwright after Shakespeare. So
Not
I
greater
watched
than
that.
Ibsen.
Huh? No,
Not greater than Ibsen.
I said Ibsen.
Oh, after Shakespeare and Ibsen. Okay.
No. This guy is Ibsen.
Oh, you're talking about. I think you said
Yeah, yeah.
Heinrich Ibsen. I heard Henry Miller. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Henrik Ibsen.
Yes, I
that's how you
agree.
pronounce it. Yeah, so I watched.
He wrote about trolls, by the way.
He wrote about a lot of stuff. I haven't read or I mean watched many of his plays, but I did in school watch Enemy of the People, and that sort of gave me a lot of these ideas. Because before, everything I've written has been sort of large scope, big picture in the sort of whole nations and very Wikipedia kind of style. Even though, of course, it is written as if it's a story. But then after that, I became more interested in the more personal psychology, and that coincided with my general interest in psychology, which led to my studies here. So I've written a lot of different stuff, and I don't think I have anything specific I want to write about, which is an issue. I change my mind every single day. Like, I'll write the whole chapter, go to sleep the next day. Actually, no, I don't like that, and I'll do something completely different. And that's how it has been for like 5
And that's
years.
the discipline you're talking about. The
Why do you think you don't have that discipline?
consistency and discipline.
To some extent, I think it's because the pace of idea generation is faster than writing, and so I will always get new ideas that capture me again, and each idea has a finite amount of attraction, you could say, and it depletes over time. And if you then have a new idea which is more captivating, like, I don't have the discipline to continue on track with the original idea, so I just switch over. So it might be
Okay, I got a couple. There's like a fork in my mind about that. So
You
I'll
have
start
to
with the
find a
first
way to do something with your ideas when they're fresh.
So Dolbez, I don't remember. You live in a Scandinavian country, right?
yes, I do.
Which one?
Norway, but I'm
Norway,
half
okay.
Swedish, so I'm basically both.
Okay, and one thing I like about those countries is that they do a lot more than the U.S. does to prevent people from hitting rock bottom and never bouncing back. That said, I've lived in my car before. I've had the police knock on my window, wake me up, and kick me out of where I was parked, and then I have to find a new place to park so I can sleep. Right? So I know why I want to make more money. Anything. I'm a writer too. As a stock analyst, I can't just analyze the stock. I have to write a thesis on it that can be read in about 3 to 10 minutes on average. So thorough enough that you can make a point, brief enough that you will not lose the attention span of subscribers. And I have to be able to do that consistently, and then well enough that I can get out, 15 to 20 a month. That's what I'm trying to do. So the other side of that too is, like, I've also been paid to do it. So there's the excitement of actually being paid for something, and then there's the sting of failure that makes you really think. Because I will tell you, when I was laying in the back of my car trying to go to sleep, I was like, how did I end up like this? What could I have done in the past, in the previous years? What different paths might I have taken to avoid this? And so obviously, I could even tell you this right now. You don't really feel it until it happens. And I would even say I was not a particularly lazy or complacent person beforehand, but my strategies weren't the best. So I at least thought I need to change my strategy, and I forgot about everything that was unfair about society, and I just said, "What's the part you can control?" It's not like I don't feel like people screwed me over throughout my life. They definitely have. If people had treated me better, my material well-being would be significantly different right now. But I forgot about that. Obviously, that's not quite as much of an issue compared to the average American. I'm not going to say you don't have people screwing you over and keeping you down throughout your life, but I don't know, right? But those could be two sides of it. Maybe if you move to America and then you're like, what if I fail here? You might be like, oh shit, I really gotta be creative here and come up with new ways to make money. Um, Possible, but even so, I don't want to say put yourself in a risk of greater hardship needlessly. But I will say, if you haven't known the excitement of actually getting paid to do something, right? Like when writing a book is just an idea, or writing, even if it's not a book, maybe it's an article or something, it's just an idea, and you can't connect it to results. I would say look online, find people who want somebody to write something for them, see what they're willing to pay to do it. It could be anything, right? Of the things that have some sort of like, we'll say a bounty on them, find the ones that you think would be most interesting to you, that most naturally fit into your knowledge base, and then just do it. And then just see how you feel after you get paid to do it, and do it at a pace that you like. Don't do it at a pace that you hate. I could write more articles in a month. I don't write more. I don't write at a pace that is above what I feel comfortable doing. I could have written one more article this week. I could have used. I could have written one on Thursday. I probably should have written one on Thursday. But I actually had made good progress for the month, and I said, I really just don't feel like it. So fuck this. I'm just going to take it easy. I'm going to go to my board game event in the afternoon. I'm not going to worry about trying to cram everything into the day. But that's also something I get to say to myself because I made the preparations up to this point. I don't actually have to cram things anymore. I can go at my own pace. So that's my thought. You said fan fictions. I know there are people who love to read fan fictions. There are some people who might even say, I will pay you $100 if you write me a fan fiction based on this fandom, and it roughly follows this. There are I couldn't link you. I just know they exist.
Yeah.
Whether it's like €100 or whatever your currency is. Is Norway in the Eurozone, or are they not in it?
Nope. We are.
So
Is it
Crones?
Crones. Okay.
It's basically divide by 10. Like 10 crones is $1.
Gotcha.
Easy
Okay. So maybe
rule of thumb.
1,000 might be that. And aim for a reasonable price. Don't do like what would be like the equal of $20 American. Fuck that, right? Look for the people who are willing to pay up, and then just see how you feel after you do it. You get paid, and then I would say at that point just start looking for things, even if they're not things you'd normally write. You want to practice your writing skills, writing in a way that people will pay for you to be a writer. Like what are people actually going to pay for? Like Hemingway wrote all kinds of things. He didn't just write novels. He wrote, like nonfiction columns, in like newspapers and stuff. He wrote short stories, and he practiced for all kinds of writing, so he could do different formats, and basically be this well-rounded writer. And that's part of why he was so successful. Why people liked his prose is because he really knew how to make it as tight and exactly what needed to be done, get as much into each page as possible. So do those things, and see how you feel about it. And then that would be my first thought: is find like the hubs or the networks where those people are, see what the postings are, and then go for ones that is going to pay an amount that would excite you.
And you could always throw your ideas into an AI and get it to work up rough drafts and stuff, so you have a captured at least, and you could rework them if you have the motivation later.
What do you think about that, Doldez?
I think it's very good advice, but at the same time, I feel my inner spirit is like going against it. That why would I work, for the pay of other? I like work on their products, their ideas. I feel kind of
You're yes, and
egotistical.
I'm becoming aware of another point that I think ties into that Joe and I left the workforce because of, for me, it's the code switching, my ability to accommodate myself to norms outside of my own. But you also run into that when you're trying to tap into an existing market too and offer your services to other people. You still have to code switch to be able to network. And there's a market out there I could tap into, which is wealthy people with autistic kids or wealthy autistic people. I cannot code switch to that population. So I have to build a new market myself, that I don't have to code switch to. And that's what I'm doing here. So a lot of the suggestions I'm hearing is about, it's still adapting yourself to other people's norms.
I would say,
and so I'm trying to find a path for those of us that don't have that ability, are choose not to compromise ourselves in that way. And sometimes that involves building your own market instead of finding an existing market to tap into.
So Dolbez, you gotta don't betray your inner spirit, but remember there's a bias in it, which is that
Yeah.
your inner spirit, as you understand it now, you think that's all there is to it. What I am saying to you is discover things about yourself that you don't even know yet. You don't know everything about yourself yet. And so you have to expose yourself to things. If you hate something when you're exposed to it, don't go down that path anymore. But you will be surprised at the things that you end up liking, that you might have even thought you wouldn't like. Um, that are like, so even with Seeking Alpha, there's been times where I thought, why would I write about this stock? Why would I? This seems like a stupid stock. Why would I even read about this kind of company? The Seeking Alpha comes to me like, hey Joe, we see that you've been writing a bunch of analyses. We'd like you to cover this one. We'll pay you a little extra up front to do it. Will you? And I said, sure. I look at it and I said, you know what? I learned something about this. I learned a little bit of information about what's happening in the broader economy, and I can connect it to other companies I was already interested in, right? And so you say you're interested in psychology, right? Well, you can look at writing a fan fiction for something that may not be interesting to you as a way to sort of practice how you think about psychology, right? You're like, okay, these are the characters. What the way these characters are written, what do I think are the likely psychological maybe issues they have that lead to the character being this way? If I were to write a fan fiction and I think this character has a psychological issue, what behaviors do I think would naturally follow? And just use the fan fiction as sort of like a context for you to sort of do your own like
Sort of case study.
yeah, case study, right? Your own sort of like thought experiment about it, right? And then so you're allowing yourself to be creative, sort of think, how would I write this? And you can get paid to do it, right? You can get paid to have your own thought experiments. Normally, you can just stand in the shower and have thought experiments. You don't make any money. In fact, the longer you stand in the shower, the more money you spend on your water bill. But in this case, you're going to get paid to do it. So why not?
And Omar, if you have any thoughts or something to add too, please jump in.
Oh, I was just daydreaming. Sorry, man. I was just.
What
watching
were you
something.
daydreaming about?
See,
Oh.
he could get paid for his thought experiments right now. He didn't do anything.
Yeah,
He was
let's see if it's
quietly
worth.
daydreaming.
Let's see how much your daydream would be worth.
Well, I was just watching Princess Di, I guess, like doing a really deep curtsy, like down to like her knees or whatever, to like I guess it was Prince Philip or whatever. But it looked like she was going to give him a little,
This is the problem. This is what really sucks too. Is if you're a guy trying to make money, is like if you're a girl and you're just naturally beautiful, it's very easy for you to just capture extra value out of that with the internet.
I knew a chick like that on here, but dude, she made so much money on this place, dude. She even got a freaking college degree without even stepping foot
Yeah.
into college.
Yeah. So
Wait,
like
what?
I do
Yeah, this is-
chesties.
this is the thing. Is like we really have to like do everything possible, like within our competence. We can't just look good. In fact, if I could make myself into a 10, I don't think I would
The
help
army
myself
hat
at
though.
all.
You don't take my advice. I tell Hank the same thing. None of you. None of you listen to your gay. The army hat will give you that edge.
Like,
So
what
you're
I'm,
not
Well,
doing everything.
I'm not trying to get like all the prepper people who are trying to live on the outside and on the periphery and to the mainstream. I'm just kidding though.
Okay.
But you see more of what I'm saying, Dolbez?
Yeah, I do. Sort of just test the boundaries of yourself and all the niches you have your fingers and toes dipped in and see, go a bit
Also,
beyond
you're
that. and see
descended from the
where-
Vikings. They went out and tried shit out. Like they didn't just say, "Oh, we're just going to sit here in Norway because my inner spirit tells me to do it." No, they got on boats.
But I definitely understand Doba's point about his creative freedom and expression versus somebody else's.
Yeah,
Although-
yeah. Go ahead. Go.
Yeah, although if my goal is to make money, then the value of something is decided by the buyer. Like, at least generally, it doesn't matter if I think this should be worth thousands of dollars if someone is only willing to pay $1 a page.
Right.
Like that, it just doesn't compute. You have to adapt. Like if you
Yeah.
want the money, you have to adapt.
If that's
to
the mode, we
people
talked about
actually
that
want it.
earlier. Not Joe said people start businesses because they compound money or wealth, and I said that's not the only reason people would start a business. So it's the motive that you're doing the work to begin with, and making sure it aligns with your authentic purpose.
But I mean, in this economy, especially with inflation outpacing growth of salaries and everything, I think it's very prudent to just seek out money as
I still
in.
think there's going to be people, and this being an outliers community, that are not going to be wired
Oh yeah,
that way, even if it is the most prudent course. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping
And
paths open for those exceptions.
yeah,
I
and
would
that's
also
your
say
way of
Me
this,
earning
being
money.
one of them.
as especially if we're talking about like your inner spirit and preserving your personal integrity and just always making it so that you're doing as much as what you want and not being forced to do things. That's easier to do once you have more money. And so it might feel sucky what you're about. I imagine your early 20s, right?
19.
19. Okay. So I can tell you, when you are
My hack is
29,
older than you.
you will not feel very much different than when you are 19. If anything, you'll probably be stronger. Um, and but you'll have a whole decade of potential improvement. And 29-year-old you will thank you greatly if you can make just steady improvements that increase your ability to do what you want when you're 20. Because when you're 29, old people are that are going to come up to you and they're going to say, "Wow, what's a kid like you doing here?" Like if you're at a place where there's a lot of old people, they're still going to think you're a young person, you know. And again, I don't know what it's like in Scandinavian countries, but here in the U.S., a lot of people by the time they're in their late 20s and 30s, they are basically wage slaves. They don't have any opportunity. They're just stuck, and they're stuck in that mindset. And it's just, so to me at 33, just to be able to do this, you know,
Are people ever
um,
stuck in a mindset? Like, I don't understand why people can't just
well, this is why
pick
the
a different
Matrix.
mindset, just like you
This is
could
why the
change your
Matrix was
outfit.
popular.
Huh?
This is why the Matrix was popular because it's dealing with the idea of like, are you plugged into the Matrix?
Oh, is that a millennial thing? They feel cognitively stuck in my. They don't
A
have
lot
the
of
ability
millennials
to.
look at
Oh, well,
regular
that's one
like
way. That's one place I can come in.
yeah they look at being trapped in like the
Because
the the wage economy as being plugged into the Matrix, and some people can get out and can't, right? And so
I
there's a
think
lot. The
anybody
Matrix is a
can if they
metaphor for a
have the
lot of
will
things.
to.
Yeah, but I will say you're gonna like um, even if it might 19-year-old you might not like it now. 29-year-old you will say, I'm so glad 19-year-old me
Yeah.
looked at these opportunities and maybe risked being uncomfortable with my inner spirit because now I have the rest of my life to let my inner spirit do what it wants.
I don't. My instinct is counseling the opposite. So we're offering two perspectives. Take the one that.
That's good.
Take any or both or none. I say don't ever compromise on your inner spirit. That's your path to your authentic self. And
Yeah.
anything that takes you out of that is taking you ultimately away from your own self. And if that's what you're trying to actually, if that's what your life goal is, if that's what you get, if your life is for you to actualize, like turn your acorn into an oak, anything that you're going to have a distorted oak tree if you let other people, if you take you away from your inner spirit.
I will say don't do anything that you know that you hate, but if you don't know that you hate it, don't be afraid to do it because you might actually like it. And when you realize that you like something, you are grateful that you found it.
That's good advice.
But it doesn't
know.
sound like he likes the idea of working for other people
Well,
instead of expressing
it
his own.
depends. It heavily depends. I think it's a little Germanic in me, but I hate inefficiencies. Like I'm very bad at starting to work, getting started. When I'm started and when I'm actually working, I need things to be the most efficient I can perceive them to be, and that's a big issue with working with other people because for the most part they are so damn inefficient.
Yep.
And that's of course subjective because the way I find most efficient will be different. But that is a big struggle. So, for example, I worked for a few months at Coop. It's like Norwegian Walmart. And
What's it called?
Co-op. So
Coop.
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 It's a cooperative and not a normal.
It's called a coop. Coop.
Yeah,
A
co-op.
co-op.
Yeah, but that's
A
the name.
worker-owned business.
But he pronounced it coop. He didn't pronounce it co-op.
Yeah, I pronounce it like we do in Norway.
Yeah,
Coop.
could you say it again?
Coop.
Coop. Coop.
Coop.
With a P?
Yeah, P. Coop.
Coop.
Co-op has
Okay.
B. Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked there for a few months.
You were a
I mean,
Walmart worker.
yes, and in the beginning it was worth it because I had a goal. I needed a new PC because my old one was just horrible. It was a mid-tier gaming laptop from 2015. Like it was struggling to do barely anything, and so I needed a new PC. I didn't have enough money to just buy it, and so I got a job. And it's kind of insane that when you don't have to pay for rent or food, how much money you can actually get from everything. Because I just worked 7 days. That's all I needed. 7 full-time days to build a complete new PC and the money left for a whole new desk and a room renovation. Not a big renovation, but you get what I mean. But then after I did that, after those early weeks, I kind of had no real reason to work. And so it was very sporadic. But the main issue I had is that I actually found the manual labor and the physical labor actually kind of enjoyable, and the meeting with customers was completely fine and enjoyable. Even some customers were really nice, but the biggest point of annoyance was actually the coworkers. That whole culture, like none of them were bad people. Well, okay, one was the middle school bully, but like outside of that, like no bad people. They were just normal people. But there's just something that it didn't work for me. So if I could have had the manual labor of organizing such a store on my own and just interfacing with customers, I would have gladly done that multiple times a week. But the fact that I had to actually meet and communicate with my coworkers all the time, that sort of changed it all. And
That's that code switching.
yeah, it's opposite what is I've heard most people are annoyed at. And most people are annoyed at the customers, and I'm like, what? Like, one person came up to me and, oh yeah, that customer you just talked to, oh yeah, it's fine. Like he's that to everyone. He's that weird. And I was like, this is the most enjoyable conversation I've had in ages. And so there's
I'm the same
big
way. It's always the
disconnect.
coworkers.
Yeah. And again, they're not bad people. They're just this is again, maybe I am a bit champagne socialist about it, but I may have grown up middle class, but my tendencies are definitely upper class in what I read, what I discuss, what my base conversations are, my connections. And so this was so disconnected, and there's nothing wrong with them per se. It's just that I just didn't fit in.
That's
with
weird. How come
that
we get
whole
along so
culture.
like we're able to converse so well? Because the upper class stuff is exactly what I can't adapt myself to. But for some reason, it's not a barrier between us.
I don't know. Maybe that's well, we have
Unless you're making adjustments on your part.
well, I'm always making adjustments, but if I had to make adjustments I didn't find okay, then I wouldn't be here. It's like you always make and adapt to the people and
Noblesse
surroundings you're in.
oblige.
But yeah, okay, I'm not a noble or anything. I'm not like that. I am just as most Norwegian, upper middle class in upbringing materially and everything. But as I said, my tendencies are more towards the upper class. And that's Norwegian from the Norwegian perspective. I don't know how it is in America, because in Norway, a normal middle class family, like even up until right before COVID, that the average middle class person, that was, you had a house, 2 cars, you could have a cabin in Sweden or in the mountains. You'd be able to travel on like 1 or 2 vacations to Spain or Italy or France a year. And you can still have a swimming pool and a very big leisurely house and everything. It's like, I'm pretty sure that the middle class in Norwegian standards are quite a lot higher than America. And so, I don't know what I'm trying to get at is that what I consider upper
Your
class.
sensibilities are bougie.
Yeah,
It's weird that you're from Sweden over there. I'm from Stockholm, New Jersey. That's weird. Really?
Yeah, well, Sweden did have some colonies in the Americas at some point. Not many, but like they tried a few ports. But no, I'm kind of both very grateful for the Scandinavian system and also very sort of annoyed because it doesn't have it doesn't drive you towards competence, because it rewards mediocrity. Of course, it still punishes weakness and being just bad at stuff. Like, that is definitely not encouraged, but the system itself is inherently equalizing, and that is, equality and growth. That's the trade-off. If you want more equality, you have to prevent or make it harder for people to become exceptional, and that's sort of ingrained in Norwegian culture. Actually, I wouldn't say ingrained. It's ingrained in one side. Like, Norway has a very big split between we'd call it janteloven, but I think you'd probably understand tall poppy syndrome better. So between tall poppy syndrome and, this drive for excellent individuals, this great man ideal. And
We have that here too. I think the left is trying to increase it, make it more like Norway.
Yeah. Although Norway, I think, adapted it quite well in that, at least in the early part, the whole system was made to prevent anything like the scarcity and suffering of, economic ruin to happen again. That even if you fall, you will have a net that can take you in, and so that can help you get up again. But it prevents growth on all levels. It prevents and disincentivizes personal growth. I don't have to work. Like, I'm studying at the university. The university is free, and I get, like, of course, it's technically loans, but as long as I can complete my degree, 40% of the loans are just slashed. Like, I don't have to pay them, and the remaining has, like, it used to be a really good interest rate. Now it's like, but it doesn't begin until you graduate. So I don't have to work at all. I just get a free education, no motivation to work at all. And then after that, we're just expected to go right into the labor market with nothing else. And even if you fail, you can just apply for help and say that, oh yeah, no, I'm struggling, and they will help you. Now, of course, that will probably change due to, let's say, a society built on trust doesn't gain a lot from importing people who aren't as
Are you talking about immigration?
Yes, they are sort of damaging the trust-based welfare state. And so it might change in the future that, I can just get money if I fail. But as it stands now, the average person who is uføretrygd, so they can't work, they get about $3,000 a month to sustain themselves. Yeah, 3,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's...
Does that reflect the cost of living up there as well?
Yes, and it's actually higher than student help. So I get about $1,100 a month. That's the average. And then the first month, I got $2,800 to begin and, put a depositum and pay for rent and everything. So, like, they get more money from doing nothing than you get for studying. And that money is free for you doing nothing, but the money for studying, that's a loan. And so Norway has all of these different inefficiencies that alone aren't that important, but when you put them all together, it's the whole structure is built around, well, just living safely and not doing much. And so Norway has really stagnated. I mean, just look at our neighbors.
What happened to the Viking spirit?
Christianity.
Oh,
Yep.
that's the wokeness has been
noticed.
tied to Christianity too. I think it's a Christian ethos.
Yeah, I remember looking at like I read a lot of history anyway, but I was more recently like looking at things from the Viking Age and when it began and like who were the people doing it, and then the moment that the Vikings started leaving people alone, and I'm like, because I'm thinking, okay, this happened. They started leaving people alone at some point. Why did this happen? And I'm like, oh, they became Christian. Pretty much the point that the King of Norway and the King of Denmark stopped, because it was often actually the kings that would lead some of these raids and stuff.
Yeah, at least in the later part.
Yeah,
They got tamed.
They stopped because they because converted to Christianity, and they're like, well, we're not going to attack our fellow Christians. Ultimately, the Christian Europeans beat the Vikings not through conquest, but through we'll say diplomacy and cultural assimilation. They defeated Germanic paganism, and it was interesting to see that it was really almost that simple.
Yeah. The moment that Olaf tries to convert in Norway, like it just takes 50 years and the Viking Age ends. Like from that point, there's in 1012 he died or something, and kind of started the end of the Viking Age, and then 50 years later, boom, it's done. Now, of course, credit to Christianity. It's not as if it stabilized, Scandinavia. It increased the standard of living for everyone. It did decrease liberties of women, to some extent, because Norse society, it was not patriarchal in the sense that we are used to, but it was still very strength based, and so it was more, if you reach this level of competence, you can, you have status, and it's just that most men reach it, and only a very slight sliver of women do. But if they do, they are fully allowed in.
Yeah, I think it was one of the cultures where females had a more regular role in warfare and fighting than other cultures.
Like, we actually allowed our tomboys to do as they liked, and that is kill people on the battlefield. We actually allow that because we're very few people. And the big reason for the Viking Age, fundamentally, is you could say actually climate change, because it got colder, so less crops could be grown in Norway, and so there was Malthusian pressure on the region, meaning that all the second and third sons who no longer could inherit any fertile lands, they had to find their wealth and sustain themselves some other way. And thus people, expanded massive trade empires and raiding and kingdoms. And that's also why we, had a particular drive to settle in the Danelaw in England, because that was actual fertile soil we didn't have at home. Now, that didn't necessarily die. I mean, we did continue participating in the Crusades and travel and be merchants. And like the beginning of the end, I think, is two-part. First, the Black Death. All our nobility died, and the nobility is generally the ones who push society, at least in the early part, because they are the only ones who can. Everyone else is, subsistence farmers. They don't have the means to actually push society in any single way. They just live. That's all they have the ability to do. And so the Black Death killed all our nobility, basically, which is different from the rest of Europe, where the peasantry was hit harder. In Norway, the nobility was hit like so hard, we imported a lot of Danish nobles, and that's sort of a sub-reason of why Norway, was subsumed into the Kalmar Union. Well, okay, not subsumed, because, it wasn't created. It wasn't like they entered it. They were a part of the creation. But there's a lot of pressures from that, in that we want that comfort, that sort of stability over the growth. And that's mainly down to Christianity. And that's what I'm trying, that's the big point, that Christianity prioritized stability over exceptionality or growth or whatever. And so you can partly blame the death.
Nietzsche calls it slave morality.
Yes. Now, I don't agree with him on all matters, but especially that he seems to favor master morality. And while, I do love me some master morality, but at the same time, there's definitely some virtues to slave morality as well. Especially, like, there's a really good quote by a theologian talking about the German spirit, and he basically says that the only thing containing the Germanic spirit is Christianity, and once it falls, like, all hell would break loose. And that he said that because he was predicting that in Germany, after the First World War, the grip of Christianity would break and the spirit would let loose, and World War II happens. And so I think that's. Did I talk about that with you, Jeff? The fact, the sort of two sides of Germanic culture is that heavily structured, orderly discipline, and then the complete craziest,
Has that been there
we
from
did
the
talk about
beginning?
that.
Those traits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Has that been
that
in Germanic culture from the start?
yes,
The
because
discipline and the
yeah, like the Raiders and the Vikings, they weren't the normal people. Like Scandinavia was mostly farmers, but you had this veneer of crazies and a sort of union between them. The crazies would bring in the new, and then the larger collective will stabilize that new stuff, and you would have this union where you know that
I
the
think
Vikings they
the
bring the
first
wealth.
um, or like maybe one of the best examples of we'll say a Germanic king that exemplified both of those traits was Gustavus Adolphus.
Oh
Amazing person. But I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he was very orderly. He was very regimented. He was very disciplined, and the men who served under him in the army were disciplined. But they just they came to life on the battlefield. They were quick. They were decisive. They were firm. And they made the Catholic armies of the Holy Roman Emperor just seem like clueless buffoons by comparison.
yeah.
All right,
That's
you associate the Catholics and the Southern Europeans with being the passionate people and stuff, but
yeah.
they don't know what to do on the battlefield.
They're passionate, but they
wait.
have
What
no
about us?
directions.
Huh?
The
Passion
the
with what?
they are passionate, but they have no direction. It's just
Mhm,
outflowing love in all directions, but there's nothing of actual worth there. But the
mhm.
Scandinavians, a tight lid, but once you open it, it just bursts out. That
Well,
that might be me
we
being
live for the
arrogant.
moment. It's Epicureanism more than Stoicism,
Yeah,
and we have individual direction, but
It's like there's an interesting thing as the way Germanic people are is that they're very regimented, they're very orderly. When they're in a good mood, they may not smile a lot even. Right? This is one of my issues. This is why I put Prussia in my self portrait because I'm not like most Americans in that I tend to express myself flamboyantly and energetically. My National Guard recruiter told me I had a good poker face because normally when he is meeting with someone that is a potential recruit, he can figure out whether or not they're going to enlist, whether or not they're going to sign the contract. And he said that he could not tell with me the whole conversation.
is that masking or is it natural?
I think it's kind of 50-50. I'm not necessarily an expressive person, but I would say I had a lot more reinforcement for um, keeping a neutral expression throughout my young adult life. Uh, I feel like I've had a lot more negative incentives when I've been more expressive than not. And so some of it I think is just it's incremental, right? It's just develop it over time. And then once it becomes habit, you just do it. Um,
You
and
got programmed.
Yeah, so yeah, you lose yourself over time, which is why I talked before. I think in a different stream about like trying to rediscover your old self through what you do, or as I've said to Dolbez, discover new parts of yourself you didn't know were
yeah.
there.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's
Mhm.
the correct phrase, right? I
Hit the
think you
nail.
got it
Yeah.
completely correct with this sort of not smiling as much because there's a very common thing that tourists arrive in Norway or people move there and like, why is everyone so cold? They're
That
just
happens up here. That
angry
was
and
my experience in
sitting
Seattle.
there.
Same exact thing.
Yeah, but
And there's a
that's
big
And the thing
Scandinavian
is, like, I
influence
think,
here
oh, I would
too.
love to go there. Finally, I don't have to like worry about
yeah,
people being unhappy
Y'all
because I
go,
don't smile
please
enough.
go.
Dolbez, so
yeah.
like one of the like the last major job I had, like a 9 to 5, right, traditional job.
Yeah.
People thought I was mad at them in our
Mm.
work chat. So we used Slack. We didn't use Teams. We used Slack. I don't know if you know what Slack is, but it's like Microsoft Teams. Think of it like Discord, but for work, basically. Um, and I would not litter my messages, whether they were in the public channels or it's a direct message to a coworker about just something I need to run by them real quick. I would not litter it with a bunch of smileys and these like even really flashy emotes. A
That's a
lot of them did
female
that,
thing.
and they thought I was mad at them a lot. And I'm just typing something. It's dry information. I'm not feeling anything. I'm just letting them know something. They think I'm mad, right? So even
Yeah.
in tech stuff, this happens, and I think I think it's just I have more of a in terms of my own cultural influences. Somehow the Northern European stuff trickled into me more than what we might think as the Southern European stuff, both of which found their way into American culture, which I think I probably got from my father. It's just he's more that classic Protestant work ethic type of upbringing. My mother, meanwhile, is Catholic, and I did not learn as much from her. I emulated my father more.
I think it's
So yeah,
similar to me. That I took more from my father, and he's Norwegian, and Norwegians tend more towards the orderly side, while Swedes are more towards the crazy and individualistic side. Now, of course, both are, crazy and whatever we may call it, but there is a distinction there that Norwegians tend to be a bit colder, tend to be a bit more reserved, tend to be a bit more introverted, a bit less, like a bit more collectivistic. I wouldn't call it socialism, but let's be controversial. Our cultural socialism is stronger in Norway, but of course, it's still stronger in Sweden than it is in the rest of Europe. It's just that comparatively
It's
between
strong
Norway
up
and
here
Sweden.
too.
One thing for some reason, my impression of Sweden is that of the Germanic nations, it seems to be, we'll say, the sunniest. Like Swedes,
yes,
they seem the most likely to smile. Like, and
ABBA.
it's still, yeah, exactly. They're a great example. But like, maybe they don't smile as big as people from Southern Europe, but of the Germanic peoples, a Swede would probably have the biggest smile. I don't know why I think that, but it just
I think
seems
there's
like
a
that.
very easy reason for that. That
Okay.
they benefited from both world wars. They haven't been at war for 200 years, and they've just stood on the sidelines, relaxing, having fun. And the period right before they, exited all warfare, that was their time of greatness. Whilst Norway, our time of greatness, and we're happy and energized. That's the Viking Age. And Denmark, they lost all their vigor with the rise of Sweden, and so they're also in the past, but they
And
couldn't have
Germany kicked him
isolated.
down a bit too.
Yeah, Germany messed them up a lot, and the Swedes and Norwegians promised help, but not much arrived. Fun fact: my, I guess, great grandpa or something fought in the Schleswig-Holstein War as a volunteer to Denmark. So there's an interesting connection there. But in general, Sweden has more resources, so they have a more robust and more vibrant economy. They haven't experienced the Danish oppression, let's say, and they
Danish
aren't
what?
as oppression.
Oh, white people oppressing other white people. Do the woke know about this?
It's surprising, who would have thought?
They don't care though.
Yeah, no, I love my Danish people. They aren't. I think people are. It's a fault of the Norwegian education system for terming, when we were under Denmark, for saying that that's they call it the long night. That's like the term of the 400 years under Denmark, the long dark night.
Wow.
And I'm like, bro, this wasn't us underneath Denmark. This was the Norwegian Danish Union. I mean, the crown prince was in Norway all the time. Like, that's where he ruled, and the king ruled in Denmark, and it was a union. Like, we had so many greats. Like, we were the majority of the navy. Well, not always, but like, you get what I mean, that this was, both were core parts of the same country. It wasn't as if, like, of course, Denmark took the dominant position, but we weren't some subjects. We were equal citizens, just the poorer side. And so when
Interesting.
it's just its nationalistic fervor that, yeah, we're our own nation, so nothing can have been good underneath these other nations. But that's just false. I mean, it was, in fact, I think it was a Norwegian queen who started this. Like, Queen Matilda, she inherited the throne of Denmark. She was a Norwegian queen, I believe. She inherited the throne of Denmark, and the throne of Sweden was given to her son, but for her to rule or something. And that's the start of the Kalmar Union. Like, we were an integral part of this from the beginning, even though it became Danish dominated. It's just modern Norwegian rewriting history, saying this is particularly dark. And, this is probably, if other Norwegians see this is probably the most controversial take on this channel.
Yeah. I don't know if
I
we have
will
any
say
other
though,
Norwegians.
our period under Sweden was kind of bad, and that's because we had already sort of established ourselves. Like Norway, I believe, still to this day has the fastest written constitution ever, because we got independence from Denmark, and the Swedes, they were then promised in a peace treaty, like 10 days after our independence, that, oh yeah, you'll get Norway as a gift, to make up for you losing Finland. And so the whole Norwegian new nation is just in a state of hurry that, oh shit, we're going to get invaded. And so we called in all the great men of the country, like our founding fathers. They gathered in southern Norway. And because Norway is so big, the people from the most north, they were actually not invited because that would take too much time.
Wow.
So they gather in the south, and they write the constitution as fast as possible, modeled after the American and the French constitution. We push it out. We lose to Sweden on the battlefield, but we manage to convince them that, okay, we can be your subjects, but you have to allow us to home rule and for this constitution to stand. And so the Swedish king annoyingly and angrily accepts. And so our interests were very different from Sweden. Like Denmark and Norway have the same interests. That's west and south for the Danish. So that's kind of the same, our interests are west, but Sweden, their interests are purely east and land-based for the most part, or Baltic-based. So a big issue was our economy was based on free trade and based on merchants' navies. Like Norway had, I think in 1900, the third or fourth biggest merchant navy in the world.
Okay.
Like our tiny, tiny country dominated international shipping. And so our whole economy was based on that, but our foreign deals and diplomacy, that was done in Stockholm, in Sweden. So they kind of restricted all our goals and wishes, and it hurt us a lot. A lot. Like we're still industrialized and still became wealthy, but you get what I mean. Like it hurt us more than it probably should have, and so we slowly began forcing our independence. Annoying them until they would release us. And the king and military actually wanted to invade Norway to keep them in, but the Swedish people stood against them and were threatening revolution if if Sweden didn't let Norway leave. So you can see the beginning that even though the governments have diverging interests, the people view themselves as siblings. And so the Swedish people, they wanted Norway independence. And
the Swedes didn't want to. The Swedish people didn't want to bully their neighbors, basically.
Yes. And a fun fact that plays to this sibling relationship: the largest ever collection of Norwegian flags was in Sweden, and that was in Stockholm, the day that Norway was liberated from the Nazis. There were just Norwegian flags all over the place. That's the largest collection of Norwegian flags ever in Sweden, celebrating Norwegian independence. So you can see that the Scandinavian countries are really tight. Like we love each other. We definitely
I saw
do.
more Norwegian flags in Wisconsin when I was visiting my friend there in August than I saw pride flags.
That's a good thing. It's the superior flag. I gotta say that.
One thing I'll even say about the Swedish flag is that it looks like more. It looks happier and more upbeat with the blue and the yellow. In fact, it even looks like them with their blue eyes and blonde hair.
Yeah.
The flag almost looks like them, just with that Norwegian or that Scandinavian cross that they all have. They're the same basic format. They're just colored differently.
Sweden is the summer country. Their whole ethos is about the summer, whilst Norway is very much the wintry, mountainy culture. We have more on the troll side. Like Sweden doesn't celebrate its national day. Like if you go ask a Swede, when is your national day? They don't know. They struggle to remember. Like 6th of June. Okay, I know. I know better than Swedes. No, but they don't really know about that because it's not important to them. But what is important is midsummer. Celebrating the sun at its highest, and a really
interesting
Norse celebration adapted into Christian stuff. And so Sweden is very summer-like, and the greatest Swedish author, Astrid Lindgren, one of her most famous sort of series was Emil i Lönneberga, which is all about this rural country farm and the coming of summer and all of this. And that's sort of the Swedish spirit is summer, whilst the Norwegian one is winter. And the
Interesting.
Danish one is just potato.
All right, I got 2 more questions to ask you about Germanic people. So we've
Okay.
established who's the happiest, and I now know
Yeah.
very well why. Who are the angriest Germanic people?
Am I allowed to branch out beyond just Scandinavia?
Yeah, all Germanic peoples,
Okay.
wherever they settled. So it could include Iceland, for example.
Oh yeah, no. Iceland, they are no.
I doubt it, but I'm just saying, like, you can go
Yeah.
far, is what I'm saying.
Who would be the angriest? Austrians.
Austrians,
think.
okay.
Because Norwegians aren't necessarily angry. They are just reserved until they're very wild. And Germans, not angry either. They're just very specific and structural. And Austrians kind of suffer from...
Oh, that might
Pretty
explain
cool.
Hitler then, because he was Austrian. And he got very angry in his speeches.
Yeah. No, I think the main point about Austria is that they're probably the people in Europe that has fallen the most. Like, if you England,
Oh,
yeah, it went
yeah.
from a superpower, but it still holds, the center of European finance and everything. There's still a position, but Austria is like, what is this, lesser Germany? Like, they went from being the dominant German power that dominated the entire East and the center of Europe to being nothing, and then to be subsumed into Germany, to be then forced out. Like, okay, they're not allowed to be Austrian greatness anymore, but they're also not allowed to be a part of the wider German greatness. And they're just
Yeah.
left in the middle. Like, that makes people angry. So,
Yeah, Prussia showed up and like said, "We'll show you how to unify Germany and not
Yeah.
include you." And Prussia was this. It was nothing at first, and they just started whipping the Austrians. And yeah, I can imagine that's not very pleasing.
so yeah, I think Austrians are definitely one. But get a Danish person drunk enough and put him in an environment with non-Danish people, he might be the most angry because his language is incomprehensible. So he'll just get angry and angrier.
Oh yeah,
According to Hamlet, you don't have to get them drunk enough; they stay drunk.
I was
drunk enough.
I was in a Discord voice chat, and there was a Norwegian and a Danish guy, and they were talking about each other's language, and I can't remember who it was, but the other one's like, one was like, "Oh, our languages basically sound the same; we can understand each other," but the other one was like, "No, yours sounds like a mumbled version of my language." He's like, "What?" He says something, and he's like, "See, yeah, it's like blah 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 blah."
Yeah,
And it's like
that's
openly insulting him.
there's a very common phrase about Danish language that Danish language is just Norwegian, but you stuff a potato down your throat.
Yeah, that might have been it. And the funny thing is that the Norwegian guy saying this was like, this is a Minecraft event. And I think a video is still being made about it. This guy ended up being like the primary, probably villain is how it will be edited of it, because he triggered a whole war that swept the world. And it all because he snuck into the town of the biggest kingdom and he was looking through their their storehouse without permission. And they're like, "What are you doing here?" And then they made him an outlaw, and then that triggered a war. It was a funny thing. But yeah, he was I think he was Norwegian. He was Norwegian or Danish anyway. But at first they're like, "We should work together. We're Scandinavian." And then it's like, your language just sounds like a
Oh yeah, that's definitely Danish. I mean, Danish is difficult to even attempt to reproduce. Actually, fun fact about Danish: if you take so the genetics of the Scandinavians are pretty similar, so you would expect them to develop pretty similarly. But Danish people learn to speak months later than Swedes and Norwegians. Their language
Really?
is just so much worse. It's just
How do people take longer to learn how to speak?
because the sounds they use to differentiate things are closer, and so you require more training and brain power to process the differences.
Wow. So some languages are learned at earlier ages than others.
Yes, and
Wow.
Danish
Yeah,
is one
so-
that is learned slower because
So I
it's
think
just
what the
mush.
Norwegian vowel sounds, I think mostly you enunciate different vowel sounds, and so it sounds clearer. Whereas with the Danes, it's like blah, 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 because they're not
Ja,
really
jeg
sitting.
snakker dansk nu. Jeg ved ikke helt, hvad du siger, men på en eller anden måde, så her
Oh,
til
yeah, they have
jeg
language
forstår det.
difficulty
Og
ratings.
du har en headset, som jeg ikke lide. Og så på den måde,
Also you can hear how it sounds. Like that's
Mhm.
classic Danish. And those words were words. I'm not, my
Danish is-
improv isn't that good that the sentence themselves was understandable. Like those were real words, but Danes just compressed them. Whilst Norwegian would be, jeg ser at du har et headset akkurat nå. Jeg heter Philip. Jeg vet ikke helt hva du snakker om, men på en eller annen måte så synes jeg dette er kult. I mean, you can hear
Oh,
the difference.
you sounded smarter that second time for sure.
Danish,
Exactly.
Norwegian, and Swedish are all Category 1 languages, which is the highest category of difficulty.
Yeah, and
So
where's
even
Denmark?
within that category, there's rankings.
Yeah, and I mean, Norwegian is quite similar to English in the man, like we come from similar origins, and the Scandinavians they invaded and settled and became part. Like your word for egg or
Oh.
husband, or those are from the Norse people.
Hang on, I made a mistake. Category 1 languages is the easiest to learn.
Yeah, they're closest to an English speaker.
So why do they take? Oh, never mind. It's not a
Okay.
rabbit hole I want to get into right now.
So I have another question too about like the cultural rankings and or placements or associations. So of all the Germanic peoples, I'm not quite sure how I want to express it with a single word, but if you think who's at the bottom of the pecking order, or like if you were to take a randomly selected person from each Germanic nation and you wanted to ask them to get something done, which one do you think would be the least likely to get something done that you asked them to do?
This is a question. I think statistically, if you wanted to pick the person who was worst or had the least chance of it, that statistically would be the English. However, they're a wild
Okay.
card because they will both be, on the rare occasions, be the ones that just absolutely dominate and do it so much better than everyone else. But for the most part, they will just be worst. And so they have,
Okay.
I would say, a higher percentage of exceptionals. And those exceptionals are more exceptional than the rest of the Germanics. However, their base population is just at a lower level. So I think that's the answer, is that statistically, English people, but they could also be the absolute top if you're unlucky.
Very interesting. Okay. Is that why they built the biggest empire?
I honestly think that's part of it, that
Okay.
once you have a mechanism that selects and pushes for that English excellence and English peculiarity, then you're powerful. Then you can do a lot. Like they can punch way above their weight, and I would say even more than the Germans. Now, the Germans are the prime example. In World War I, basically fighting the entire world alone, and they still, do kind of well. I mean,
Mhm.
they're still doomed from the beginning, but they do kind of well.
They
And
do.
same
They do
with-
way better than they should have. They should have lost
Yes.
that almost immediately.
and especially in World War II as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
They like, generally Germanic people punch way above their weight, but English people, once they are energized in the proper way, they do that to the highest extent. And what's interesting about America actually is that I think America will be the most stable and well-rounded of the Germanics, because you have mixed all of these groups into one. And so if you just want something trustworthy, the American is a good pick. And they will generally be highly competent. But if you're gonna chance it on exceptionality, then you should probably pick someone that's more in a unique culture instead of an amalgamation culture, if you get what I
So
mean.
would you say America is, even though it's had a lot of people come here by now that make it up, would you say that it's primarily defined by its Germanic origins?
Oh yeah, Like the foundation was made by Anglos.
That's the largest ancestry in the U.S.
Yeah, foundation was made by Anglos, and the largest immigrant group, at least in the early years, like the first 100 years, were Germans or Germanics, and so that's the foundation. It doesn't matter if they get 100 million Spanish today, because the base system, the base culture is Germanic, and you will need a lot of time to to push that out. So I'm not saying it's impossible for them to stop being a Germanic nation. And of course, America is less Germanic than a lot of Europe. That's only natural. But there's still, I would say, still a Germanic nation. At least, the thing about America is that there isn't, it isn't like it's just the North that have the Germanics and then the South are Latins, like in Europe. It's quite easy to distinguish. In America, it's very different. Like the Appalachians in the South, you'd expect that to be, Southerners, No, that's Scottish and Irish, and and border English and Welsh and everything. And it's more difficult to distinguish, and that's why I think America doesn't have as much of a map of separate cultures. They have more one amalgamated Germanic culture, at least after all this time.
So let me ask you this then, because you talked about the Germanic spirit.
You're muted, by the way, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff is okay. I was going to ask.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize we have at least 11 distinct cultural regions, and here's the map of the ancestry distribution.
I'll let Jeff say this first. Yeah.
So I would dispute that we're one amalgamated Germanic nation.
Well, I'd say that that's the foundation, is a unified culture that's more unified than Germanic Europe. But yes, there is distinctions. Like the Midwest, certain regions of that are very heavily Norwegian, whilst others are very heavily German. And so, of course, that will have an effect. But as a whole, it's sort of amalgamated. Now, it isn't amalgamated equally between the Germanic peoples, because the Anglos and the Germans, they dominate a lot. So if you
and the blacks, don't forget the blacks.
Well, yeah.
They're the second group after the Germans.
Yeah, but it has to be said though, a lot of black culture. This might also be very controversial to say. I'll just say I heard it from a black person, which is true. So a lot of black culture comes from white settlers in the South, not the slave owners, but like white farmers in the South who came from the border regions in Northern Ireland and in Northern England. So English people, English bumpkin peoples in the borders, in the lawless borders between, Ireland and Scotland, and they settled in America. And I mean, it's illogical to believe that slaves kept their culture completely, because they were taken from all over Western Africa. Of course, there were some hotbeds where they took more from, but they were taken from there, often as kids, often as young adults, without families. Not the people who transmit the culture, but just normal workers, and you disperse them across country and you mix them all the way from different regions, and you put in new people all the time. And so the stable cultural influence will be what they find there, not necessarily what they bring with them, because that's going to be ruined over
and they
time.
were, they were punished out of their.
Yeah.
They were not allowed to keep their identities. They had to.
Yes.
They had the cultural norms of the West put upon them. Like,
so is that Anglo-Irish working class culture?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That they are not Germanic by blood, but a lot of the culture is inspired by this English border culture. Like, you can see the memes about London, it's all, I'll shank you and I'll kill you and a knife, and if you look at that and compare that with the gun culture in Black America, like, that is very, very similar.
Yeah,
in
it's
fact,
Southern American honor culture.
Yes,
but you see that in Mexico and South America too. I wonder how much of that is just class based. Are you saying the working class Germanic culture is not like that? It's different.
Yeah.
Honor culture.
Are there two working class cultures here then?
Maybe, but I mean, the working class, at least in Scandinavia is not like that at all. We don't have.
I mean, that's what you see on the Panelverse. I'd say that's the Panelverse culture
There's
too,
not the same
mostly.
romantic culture in the U.S. that there is quite in Southern Europe.
Yeah. Italy might actually be a
Yeah,
well, southern Italy very specifically. Northern Italy is more
I come from a
industrial.
romantic culture myself, and it definitely clashes with the dominant American culture.
Yeah, so like Sicilians are known for like
Yeah.
their vendetta culture, and that's not
Yes.
quite the same as honor culture. It's at least as it exists. There's more in common between the honor culture of Southerners, white or black, and Scottish people. The honor culture between those two areas than say the vendetta culture of Sicily. Sicily
Yeah.
is more like it's kind of like what informed the mafia. Like if and this is true of like a lot of the Mediterranean. Like this was a thing in Corsica, and like I learned about like reading about Napoleon. Like if you um, wrong someone's family, like let's say you killed someone's relative, someone from that family would then have to kill you, and they would sneak up on you and kill you. Whereas in the South and a lot of stuff, it was like more of a swords at dawn kind of, we'll meet, we'll have a fight, right? We'll sort of settle it in when they call it having it a square go.
Yeah.
And that's more of it. It's less playing dirty and more like meet me outside kind of honor culture thing.
That's funny enough. That's mirrors exactly some remnants of Norse culture that I read a Norse poem or something, and like a central theme was this. It's called a holmgang, which is a duel to the death. You took my wife, but I won't come and kill you in the dark. We'll go out there and we'll fight, fairly and properly, and the strongest may win, whoever that might be. And I wish you the best of luck. Like that is deeply ingrained. And
Yeah,
What
that's why it's
what
honor
country
culture,
is that you're talking
there's
about?
a formality
Norse,
to it.
that's Scandinavia.
Oh,
Holmgang.
really? Okay. Is that
Well,
honor
and war.
culture? Is that considered honor culture? I come from an honor culture.
Yeah, like dueling here in the U.S., right? We had dueling. We had to ban it because dueling was common here in the U.S. due to that being brought over here, and especially common in the South. Andrew Jackson, like, had like I think like 10 duels throughout his life, and he got shot in 2 of them. He had 2 bullets embedded in his body up to the day he died. And so yeah, people did that stuff. That's how Alexander Hamilton died. He did the duel with Aaron Burr.
I think a big reason for why you could say it's such a distinction between the South and the North is that the North is more individualistic, and so they don't see this breach of honor as an attack upon the family and the clan. So in the South, if
But
you were wrong, it would be.
it can even come down to individual honor. It doesn't have to be clan or family related.
Yes. But the foundation, at least how I see it in the South, with this would be that you wrong the family and you have these feuds, and so you will have to take revenge. And there's, let's see, what was that comment? That was interesting.
Muslims are Western culture. They're not separate from Western culture. Islam is a part of Western culture.
Christianity
It's
is
one
a
of the
Middle Eastern
Abrahamic
religion.
religions, and
Like
Abrahamic
Christianity came from the Middle East and eventually found its way to the Vikings. I mean, yes, the Middle East influenced Europe.
But I will dispute that, Jeff. I don't think West is just Christianity. The Western culture is the mix of Germanic invaders of the Greco-Roman foundation.
It's Greco-Roman and Hebraic Christian, and Islam rose out of. Islamic is not a separate culture. It emerged from Western culture. It's as much part of Western culture as all of the other cultures.
No, Islam emerged out of the desert.
It's an Abrahamic religion. It's founded on the Abrahamic text. Like, how could it not be a Western culture?
Because the West is not, like, I don't consider Israel to be out.
Yes,
Western
Israel is the
culture.
West. Greece, Rome, Israel, Muslim culture. That's all, and that's all. I study Western culture and antiquity. I assure you, it is all included as part of Western culture. The Greek heritage passed over into the Islamic culture and got preserved, and so that's what shows up in our Western culture today. Not laws is right there, unless you're considering like the Eastern Rome and Western Rome as two different cultures. But I consider all of that part of Western culture, as do most scholars. Eastern culture is Asian cultures. The Oriental and the Occidental. Occidental is
Then
Western.
I'll dispute the scholars because I think
You're
there's
just using
much-
Western differently than it's traditionally used.
Yeah. To me, Western,
Dolbez, I
West-
wanted to get this other question. Is now that Jeff talked.
But
more
if you
about
look at the
different
cultural
cultures,
DNA,
Yeah.
Islam has the same cultural DNA as Greco-Roman and Hebraic Christian culture. It grows out of the same cultural matrix.
it
It's not
lacks
an Asian
one-
culture for sure,
It lacks,
or an African culture.
It lacks the Germanic side of the West.
But
though. That
Germanic is just one subset of Western culture. The Greeks and Romans weren't Germanic either. They adopted.
That's the thing. I don't consider the ancient Greeks and Romans to be
Well,
Western.
I'm saying most scholars do. I studied Western civilization in college, and we did a whole semester on the Greeks and Romans leading up to the Middle Ages, and then the second semester was the Germanic part from that point forward. But it was all Western culture.
Well,
It all
I
has the same
disagree.
foundational cultural text.
I disagree because I
so-
think it's
Well,
not
you're
useful.
an oddball here.
Maybe I am, but I consider the Greco-Romans and the
Jeff,
Christianity and
I
Germanic to be
want to ask
parents
Dolbez.
of this.
I want to ask Dolbez another thing
Yes.
about the Germanic spirit. So, we talked about that, and like you talked about it being unleashed, and then you have a general thesis that, we'll say thesis that America is built upon is a primarily like Germanic country in terms of its origins, and then anything that comes in is sort of on that foundation and therefore influenced by it.
Wikipedia says
And-
the same thing.
So my question is, if when we look at like the successes of America from where it started to where it got today and what caused that rise to happen, do you see that as America channeling the Germanic spirit among those who came here to success?
I think that would be me being too culturally reductionistic because a big part of American success is, first of all, luck that they emerged when Britain was busy and Britain didn't want to conquer them back in 1812. After that, it's more not as much luck anymore. But you have to give credit to that absolutely beautiful geographic position of America. Like America is France on steroids when it comes to geography. They could expand into fertile land to the other side of the sea with barely any resistance. Now, of course, there was resistance, and that land was untilled, unsoiled. It was really fertile and full of resources, and they could just expand, and they could do that at the same time as the medicine in Europe advanced faster than increases in agricultural developments, meaning there was a Malthusian pressure on Europe, which causes a lot of people to leave because there's not enough food in Europe to sustain them or free land. Because, with medicine advancing, you get less deaths, child mortality, meaning more people into adulthood, but food production didn't advance as fast. And so they have a free stream of millions of highly cultured, not highly cultured, but like actual literate, generally able Europeans streaming into America. They have so much free land that they don't know what to do with, and all that free land is full of really valuable resources. And to the north, they have Canada, which is, at the start it was an enemy, but like that's a semi-friendly but also lowly settled, at least compared to America. And so
Canada
that's
has its
safe.
own expansion to do, so they don't need to worry
Yeah.
about fighting with America.
Exactly. And the
Canada has
Mexicans-
not laws.
And the Mexicans, they inherited all the faults of the Spanish system. Like the way Spain did its colonialization was not good for nation making, let's say. And so they inherited all the faults of that system, and they weren't really as much as challenged America. And so America, I don't think they would have done as well without the Germanic foundations. But attributing it all to the Germanic foundations, I think that's faulty. They would still become a really wealthy power, but without the perfect position, they would have probably just been similar to France or Britain and not the superpower they are now. It's the combination of the right culture and religion to adapt and actually use the free land they have.
Okay, very very interesting. I like the subtleties to it. It's also interesting how much you've read up on what's happened here in North America from across the sea. I don't really know how much people know about what happened over here, because I feel like most of history is us learning about what happened in Europe, and then suddenly America shows up, and then we learn about us. But it's interesting. So the other thing I think is sort of like tied up, because I don't know, Jeff. Maybe you're getting close to a stopping point.
Well, I have something at 4, which is another hour and a half, so we got some time.
Okay, gotcha.
But I may have to end early if I get a message from a friend.
Okay. Say Adilda, has this, when we think about the original topic and then talking about what we did, is like the Germanic spirit in you, have you thought of ways that you will unleash its potential into the world?
Well, he's studying psychology.
He is?
Yeah, but I have...
Are y'all trying to subvert America right here on my stream live?
Well, my position is Europe first, the West second, and everyone else after that again. So,
not subvert, maybe convert or revert.
To what? What do you want to? You have an agenda. What do you want to convert us to? Don't come over here and bring that. You're like a crypto Karen.
That's a beautiful term.
Go join BRICS. Go convert them.
Is there no one in BRICS is Germanic though, so they're not part of it, except maybe South Africa.
Are y'all Aryans? Is that where this is going?
I don't know. What do I look like?
I'll go about your agenda culturally.
Yeah. What color is my beard? This is the first time I've had a beard in my life.
It looks a little reddish, like maybe a little bit of ginger to it.
Yeah.
Ginger brown, maybe.
Exactly.
Gingerbread.
And what people grow those beards still this? Can you tell me?
Celts, Germanics.
There we go.
Although your teeth are too good to be Anglo, so you
They did not start out this way. I had a lot of orthodontic work over my life.
Same with me. So maybe I'll
I'm suspicious of you two. What are y'all up to? Just 2 Germanics show up on the panel and they're already plotting.
Well, we just see the natural hierarchy of things.
Exactly. And
are yourself deluded?
And all the smiling.
I guarantee I have a richer, healthier emotional life and enjoy life better than any Germanics I've met. So it depends on what metric you're using to create the hierarchy.
Strength, power, capability. Although, France got to have credit for being probably, the nation who has won the most battles in all of history. So, they got to get some credit, but, they have identity issues. They don't know if they're Romance or Germanic,
Yep.
They're struggling.
They're at the apex of being Germanic, Mediterranean, and Celtic, and they just like, what are we? It's just flapping their arms.
Y'all are the ones seem to be having some kind of identity crisis.
Like, that's what they are. They are such a merger of everything that they aren't purely
Y'all are making me side with not lies.
They're just French. That's what they are. They have created their own essence. Germans are... No, they're not paranoid. They're just structural, careful. They have to analyze all these different things, It's not paranoia if you're actually right, Write down all of these imperfections.
Well, you don't find out you're right until it's tested.
True. But no, we don't have any secret agenda. Well, actually, maybe I do.
If we do, it's a conspiracy theory. That's all.
Yeah, that's what we'll say. And hopefully this episode doesn't go.
Well, we'll see what y'all can do with this channel and go from there. If you can structure and make it great.
I'll share something. Technically, the biggest share of my ancestry is probably not Germanic. It is Slavic. So there you go.
Mm.
Oh, I
Because
didn't know that.
no, it's a bit of a question mark because this is what I'm told from my mother, and she was adopted. But she's based on what she was told about her biological parents. She is half Polish and half Croatian. So, yeah,
That is, I trust your eye for nonsense, Phil, not us. If this is coming from you, I believe it.
I will say though, you don't look Slavic. Well, actually, I think that's more with the way
I'm
you
not very
dress.
tall. I'm not very tall.
Ah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
I think the height is more of a Germanic thing, but I don't know that Slavic people are known to be
Well,
particularly tall.
okay. The height is more related to how cold the area that genetic group grew out of, because just in general, cold areas have bigger animals because that's more heat efficient, and so in the north, the more north you go, generally the taller the people will be. But there's also the fact of Africa is, since they've had humans the longest, they have the most biodiversity in humans. They have both the shortest and the tallest, but their average is much shorter than Germanics. Just an interesting tidbit. So, like, the tallest, I believe, are the Dutch.
Yes, the Dutch.
But the Norwegians, Swedes, and Danish aren't far behind. But the statistics are muddled because it's very annoying. But if you search up average Norwegian height, it will give you the height of the average person living in Norway. So they include immigrants, which has pulled down the average height. Now,
the Dutch are interesting because they seem like, of all the Germanic groups, the ones that are like the least Germanic. They just kind of almost became their own thing. They don't seem to relate to the others as much.
Yeah, they're like, you have, if you want to split into sort of stereotypical groups of Germanics, you have the Scandinavians, the British, the Germans, and then for the Swiss and Austrians, you have the mountain Germans, and then for the Dutch, you have swamp Germans. So they,
What are those?
they
Dutch are the swamp Germans?
Yes.
Oh, wow. They
well,
seem so classy on TV.
Well, there's a very big reason for why they're called swamp Germans, and that's because, well, the whole area was so flat and swampy and marshy, but they have spent
The dikes.
1,000 years recovering their land. And so, yeah, and also a point is that they are kind of similar to Scandinavians, at least more similar to Scandinavians than there are Germans, in the sense that Germans are very land-based, eastward facing, whilst Scandinavia has been very sea-based. Same with the Netherlands, very trade, sea, individuality. So all of that has made them closer to the North Sea.
When capitalism really had its origin in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Like, well, okay, we have to give credit to the British.
Stocks were invented by us down in Louisiana. So we're millionaires.
Well, I think the first
That's a French
public
word.
exchange was in Amsterdam, if I remember correctly.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
And that was to bet on colonial ventures.
But I think it was a British guy, actually, that came to the colony and created the concept of stocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the British created a large, we'll say, system in which, so the Dutch kind of do it. The British sort of take the mantle of global colonialism, and then they have a bigger country, a bigger empire, to like let the theory of it really work. And then we just copy the British, and then, like you said, we had a lot going for us. A lot of right things at the right time in the right place.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit of Germanic spirit in there.
Yeah, we can add a little spice.
Well, there's a thing mentioned earlier that's seen as important in American history is the Protestant work ethic. Is that, especially in the 19th century, as a lot of
the whiteness
Germans came over, the whole idea is like you work, and prove your worth. Yeah, like, how do you get to heaven? Prove that you're a hard worker, kind of thing. And if you look at like a lot of successful businesses that still exist that were started in the 1900s, a lot of them have German names, because somebody came from Germany, and started, like, so Heinz ketchup, right? And Heinz, you can see the name right there. And then I think Kraft which Kraft and Heinz are now one company.
That
but
sounds
Kraft,
Germanic.
yeah.
Kraft means power. Yeah, Kraft.
Oh wow.
Kraft. That
And
just
also,
means power.
Trump, right?
Yeah. Actually, I'll add something to that. There's, you could say that another split in Germanic people is between the commercialists and the industrialists. So the Scandinavians and the Dutch and the English, they are very commercial based trade and interconnectivity, whilst the Germanics are very industrialist, manufacturing based, and very hard work. Like they people say that the first like modern colonialization was to the Americas, but no, it was German settler towns into the east. So there is a reason Lebensraum was meant to go east, because there were already millions of Germans across the entire east working in these small communities, outproducing everyone, and everything went through them, and they have this industrialist side, at least more than the British, or well, I'll say English commercial basis.
I
So
remember learning when Prussia got Silesia from the Austrians. Silesia was a major manufacturing province, and that's why they wanted it. And so it was annoying enough to like lose that to Prussia, right? That's one of the first things I think that contributed to the Austrian identity that exists today, is the guy who got kicked around by a smaller country. But what the Prussians then did is they significantly increased the output of the industrial facilities there. So not only did they take it, but then they ran it better. And you can imagine how much that makes the Austrians grit their teeth. Oh, isn't that nice, Prussia? Well, good for you.
Woo! And then especially like a few decades later, they get the most resource-rich areas in the West, and they just basically industrialize in an instant. They begin catching up with Britain. It's like German industrial power is really insane. Well, okay, not power. Let's say capability, because they were latecomers to the early industrialization. So they were within the second wave, and they still caught up to the people who had been there from the first wave. So Britain had almost.
It's actually amazing to me what they accomplished, because, well, one, they got decimated by the 30 Years' War, and then even for a couple centuries after that, they weren't
60% of the population in certain areas was dead.
Yeah, and then, but when they finally unite, they become the leading power. They lose 2 world wars. Their country is split in 2 for half a century. And then what happens after they get reunited? What happens? Like, where do they rank in the European Union? Are they at the bottom or the
strongest? Top? They're the top.
And it takes almost no time.
Yeah. A part of that is, you could say, okay, this might be into conspiracy theory territory.
I'll let you know.
A part of the recovery of Germany post-World War Okay, actually, post-World War One, that was for the most part just inflation fuckery by Hjalmar Schacht. He just made economic magic, creating money from nothing in a way that hid inflation. And so people were tricked and everything. Like, he did some fuckery that allowed them, in addition to the German work ethic, that allowed them to recover fast. But after World War II, of course, it was the natural German tendency to just be good. I mean, if you look at the East Germans, they were the most productive members of the Warsaw Pact, but they were still a third, even a fourth of the productivity of the West Germans. But, so there is something inherent to the German spirit in productivity. But the reason West Germany recovered so fast is, first, the Marshall Plan, and they spent it wisely. So Britain was kind of stupid in how they spent the Marshall Plan, all the money from that. America just gives you money. What do? Should you A, try to hold on to your colonial possessions with that, or B, rebuild your nation? Britain chose B, not A, I mean. They were very unwise with that money. I think the French were much wiser in general. But back to Germany. Another thing they did, though, is that the Nazis kind of already knew the war was lost by 43. And so you have a lot of the top Nazis are beginning to prepare for, the loss and the reemergence. Like, their idea was that they would stay in the shadows, and then come back. But they needed to safeguard all these German assets and money and industry. And part of that was relocating this industrial base into more neutral countries that can then be transported back to West Germany or Germany after the loss. And, a lot of that industry and money went to Argentina, a lot went to Sweden, a lot of the people went to Sweden, Argentina. But then after the war, they flocked back kind of quickly and helped rebuild the nation. And so it isn't just the Germanic spirit and tendency for efficiency that allowed them to recover.
Don't the Chinese have that too?
Well, the Chinese have a tendency to have a lot of people. And they can exploit that and use that, but I don't think per capita they are that productive. Actually, I just think it's economy of scale. They have 1 billion people that they can somewhat decently manage, and that's going to outcompete basically anything just purely based on economy of scale.
Kind of like how the Soviets won in the East.
Yeah, definitely. Although, we got to give credit. The early Soviet tanks were on par with the Germans up until the Panther and King Tigers and stuff. So, like, in the early war, their tanks were on par, but their skills were not. Like, there's the biggest air battle in history, I think, was in the opening weeks of Operation Barbarossa. So, German invasion of Soviet Union. And you, on one side, I believe you had about 1,000 or 2,000 German planes, and that was a battered air force, having lost like 70% of all its elite fighters in the Battle for Britain. So, like, the Battle for Britain kind of crippled the German air force, because when you're fighting over enemy land and your planes are shot down, you lose the pilot. They will be captured, and Britain can resupply with good pilots. And so they lost all their elite pilots, and they lost all their planes. But they started out like 2,000, 1,000, 2,000 planes against Soviets, 10,000. Do you know how many German planes were shot down? Like 50.
Boy.
And they absolutely decimated the Soviet Air Force. And after that, the Soviet Air Force couldn't challenge them at all until like the beginning of the end. And so, like, the Germans just per capita outperformed anyone. Now, it was kind of close between the British, Americans, and Germans. Still, the Germans outperformed them. But on the Soviet side, like, you have the Soviets with 10 million men and the Germans with like 3. And at least for a few years, it is on the German side now. Of course, the rule of scale, like, the larger you are, that is a quality of itself on its own. But they still lost. But it's insane that per capita mobilization that Germany managed.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, because when you learn about it as a kid, they make it seem like it was more of an even fight. But when you actually learn about the numbers, it's like, wait a minute, this should have been done in the first 6 months. It should not have gone on this long.
What is this? It's insane that they managed to, in the First World War, if you look at a map of the First World War and look at all the allies and enemies, it's insane. You have literally these two countries, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and of course I know the Ottoman Empire, but they're nothing. They're ready to collapse, and the Bulgarians are too small to matter, even though they're really good. But like, you have these two empires in the center of Europe. They are starved by British blockades. They have enemies on all sides, and then like entirety of China, entirety of Japan, all of Russia, the entire colonial empire of both France and Britain, and later also the United States joins in. And they still manage to hold on for 4 whole years, and they push. Like, it's, or in the Second World War, on the African front, the Italians they lose tremendously. The Italians are bad, but part of that is that they're unprepared. So Mussolini, he thought the war would start in 1942, and it started in 1939. So he was fucked from the beginning, but that's unimportant. So they are fucked. They call for help from Germany. And so you have like 20,000, 40,000 German troops under Erwin Rommel, the Africa Corps, against like 200,000, 300,000 British. And the Germans push them. The Germans are winning. Like, they end up losing in the end. But that's not until Operation Torch, when the Americans land in Morocco on the west. It's like 40,000 Germans can at least hold 300,000 British if they have a good enough general. And I think that the American military even had some statistics that a German soldier is worth about 1.3 American soldiers, which doesn't sound that much. But, you know, if you have a million-strong army, Americans are going to need 300,000 more people to match it. And then it begins to be pretty... I don't actually know if it was 1.3, but I think it was in that range against the Americans specifically. Against the Soviets, it's probably like 1 to 5, at least in the beginning, and then closer to 1 to 2 towards the end. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it is really fascinating stuff to think about all that. And then even in peacetime, again, just through their business ventures, their industrialness, and then even look at the more commercial side sometimes. It's just, there's this something culturally there that drives excellence. And is it like, we go back to like how Germanic people are often seen as being cold. Is it just that they don't get caught up on their emotions and they just see things for what they are and then they just go straight for it? Is that really what a lot of this is?
I think kinda, yeah. That part of their...
Hang on. I think there's a bias there. What does getting caught up in your emotions have to do with observation and perception? You can do both.
You can, but it's... I mean, if your goal is production and you can just lock off your emotions for a while, like, you're gonna be...
I can produce and emote at the same time.
Not everyone can.
Well, there are
But I am
European
Cajun. Like,
cultures-
we work and our work and play is one thing. We get the job done and we have fun doing it.
Yeah. But I will actually add, I think part of it isn't necessarily that, but it's more the Germans are at their core more analytic and more efficiency based or structural. Like, it's very important with structure and analytics. They're cold in that sense. Not
Are emotions
necessarily
inefficient?
anti-emotion.
Is that the...
No,
thing?
emotions are necessary.
I'm just not seeing the relations with emotion, because you can have all of that and still have emotion.
Well,
I don't
here's
see
an
why it
interesting
requires no emotion.
Here's an interesting thing. Like when we talk about how Italy didn't do well in the war, like the Italians are the descendants of the Romans, right? Like, a lot of, like, when we talk about romantic cultures and them being maybe more emotional and not as stern, right? We're borrowing that from the Romans, and yet the Romans were a very orderly, organized society, and that's why they built an empire. And like, what was lost, you know, for what made the Romans so successful in their time between now, where Southern Europe is just sort of seen as, if you're expecting, let's say, great things to happen in the European Union countries, you're not going to be looking like in Spain or Italy or Greece per se. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it must be said though that Spain currently is growing pretty well, and I think Italy is also growing really fast, faster than the North. But Greece is still falling behind tremendously. So yeah, Greece is just... they're not a functional country. Like, they would have collapsed without the EU. But yes, so there's definitely some truth to that. And I think a big part what they lost with Romans is become too wealthy. Like, in the beginning, do you know what the Gini coefficient is?
Yes.
Yes. So in the beginning, in the early Roman period, that was really low. That it was the duty of the leaders to actually fight. The poor didn't fight. They weren't supposed to fight. Only the rich are allowed to fight. They already have that discipline and structure and growth and expansion. Like, that's your only duty in life. And you continue. But then as you go forward into Roman history, it becomes more delegating all these poor people. And then it becomes just hiring these mercenaries to do the wars for you. And you end up just living off of the wealth of your forefathers without actually doing stuff yourself. Like, you don't have to do the same amount of growth and wealth creation as your forefathers, but you have to do some level of input to not degrade culturally and you could say spiritually almost. So
Now you bringing in some concepts that, because I don't know what it means to degrade. How do you tell what's
well, of course, we're
degradation and
talking about
what's just change?
we're talking about economic output here,
Okay.
and yeah, that's like the metric here: productivity. And why is the south of Europe less productive than the north? And I think that's because the north has been the frontier more recently in history, whilst the south kind of got complacent.
But then you mentioned spiritually too, which brought a whole
Oh yeah,
new
because even
dimension.
when Italy was divided, they had a lot of rich Italian republics. They could
At least in the
sponsor the
north.
Renaissance. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course they were the center of trade in the Middle Ages, so they were really powerful. But they sort of lost that with, Portugal. Portugal kind of ruined, or the Ottoman Empire, but mainly Portugal, honestly, ruined North Italian wealth because they found and they navigated underneath Africa and into Asia, and so traditionally, the Silk Road, it ends in North Italy. That's the Silk Road, from China to northern Italy. That is like the way, the axis or the road that trade has followed for all of history. Well, not all of history, but at least since the Romans, it has gone from China to Italy. But then Portugal comes around and makes these boats that can navigate on open waters and are kind of efficient, and they can go south around Africa and into Asia, and like the Italians just lose all relevance. They're ruined. Like less and less people trade through that route, especially considering the Ottomans are putting heavy tariffs on Europeans or Christians trade through the Constantinople. And so, and then the South Italy is, well, it's much simpler why it's ruined. They have been controlled by the Muslims a lot, by the Eastern Romans, a lot of wars, but then finally the Spanish, and the Spanish view them as a resource extraction colony. The Spanish model of colonization was actually tried first in South Italy, and then taken from there into Americas, just as the Portuguese system was tried on the island of Madeira and taken from there into the colonies. And so South Italy was basically just an extraction colony of the Spanish, and they didn't really do any nation building. They didn't do any real policing. And that's like the beginning of the mafia. The Spanish aren't there to protect South Italy from Muslim raiders and slavers. And so they have to, or from local disputes. And so the South Italians have to find out a way to do this themselves. And, that's the creation of the mafia. Because of Spanish, not incompetence, because the Spanish benefited greatly from this, but the South Italians didn't.
It was a low risk model for them. It was something where it's almost like franchising, right? You get your cut, right, and then most of the hard stuff you leave to the franchisee, and you just you don't have to get your hands too dirty.
Spanish were genius until they weren't. I mean, if Spain was better with managing the immense wealth they got, they would have still been like the most powerful nation on earth. Just
if they'd been and if they had been less, they would have managed their wealth better, probably, if they had managed their royal pedigree better, we'll say.
Yeah. And a big issue with Spain is that they, instead of like the wealth pouring in from the colonies in Spain was much greater than the wealth for Britain or France, but at least when in comparison to the Dutch or the British, that wealth went primarily to a noble elite that was more about warfare than actual development. And so it's very different from the wealth from the Dutch colonies. That went, like, the Dutch colonized with companies, basically. The British did that to some extent as well. And so a lot of the wealth from the colonies went to private individuals to be able to start industries, businesses, and ventures back at home or abroad. Was in Spain, the wealth went primarily to nobles, the aristocrats, and that's just continued the wealth distribution of the Middle Ages.
Right, they it basically imported the manorial system into their colonies.
Yeah,
and that was similar to like the problems Mexico had. It inherited that system, and then when it's up against the more industrial U.S.,
Of course they're gonna lose.
It's just, and what's interesting too about the Mexican-American War is that it was not a given that America would win that war. America is still very early in its process, and I believe the Mexican army was about twice the size of the American army that was deployed to attack it. And Santa Anna was also not a stupid general. He wasn't necessarily incompetent. He had, conquered essentially Mexico for himself as a warlord. And so it's like Mexico could have won it, and if they had, they would have had the Southwest and all the opportunities that came with that.
But I think they'd still squander it because the Spanish culture has the moment they find gold, they lose all their marbles and they go insane. Like, can you imagine what would happen to the Mexican nation and economy when they find gold in California? Like, that ruined them long term. Like, short term wealth, but long term.
There was that quote by, I think, Cortez that I think goes, "We Spaniards have a disease of the heart that can only be cured by gold."
I do kind of love the Spanish in the sense that they were so, like, they were cool, and they were like, okay, the credit has to be given to the Spanish. I think they have sort of similar case to the British in that the average is kind of mediocre, but the actual extremes are like insane. Like, have you looked at Pizarro or Cortez? Like, how many men they had that they needed to take over the Incas and the Aztecs? Like, Pizarro had 100 men, and that was enough to make all the dominoes fall. And
Cortez was like, when he went to Mexico, he was like some crazy Risk player, like the board game Risk. The way he went in with that and just came out of it on top. It's actually kind of amazing. It was not the way a German would win a war. It was. There's definitely something very Spanish about it, we'll say.
Yeah. And I mean, it paid off. It clearly did. They, especially, honestly, both. Like, it's insane how much gold was in the mountains and land of Mexico and Inca. And since, European economy was based on gold at that time, and silver, like, they just got free money. They got a free money printer, and they spent that to become the most powerful nation in Europe. But the Spanish are kind of crazy, and I do really appreciate them for that. I
appreciate the Spanish for a different reason, but
the food. No,
it has to do with this girl I've known online over time. But yeah, well, let's just say that, like, if things completely fell apart, I could maybe say, "Hey, what if I moved to Spain and expect a favorable response?" So yeah,
a good last resort or a first resort. You don't know,
right?
But no, the Spanish are kind of obviously the Portuguese as well. Like, people forget that at some point Portugal was the #1 trading power.
They had
of course,
moment.
Yeah, the Dutch took over because the Dutch were just better. But credit has to be given that the Portuguese were the first actual, you could say, modern, more free trade oriented nation, because Spain was all about just extracting resources and take it back to the motherland. But Portugal, they were actually an early trading power in the global sense. I mean, they even got like a tiny city in Japan to trade through, and they were everywhere and had like ports in China and India and all across Africa, and like they credit
and then
to that.
The Dutch replaced them in Japan even.
Yeah, it's like the Spanish went west, the Portuguese went east, and well, look at this. The Portuguese also went to Brazil, but like, yeah, no credit to that. But they also fell off. That's kind of sad, honestly, because if you look at, Dutch disease, the term when a nation finds like a extremely valuable and lucrative natural resource, and the entire nation becomes reliant on it. Usually in relation to oil, that Venezuela, they find a lot of oil. That's all them they are now, or the Saudis, like that Dutch disease.
Or like drama in the Panoverse.
Yeah, and like Spain found that they got that with their gold. Their entire economy was based on this gold from the
And that's why
colonies.
like a lot of the Arab countries are like reinvesting a lot of their oil money into building up their economies so that they can like eventually have other things to do when eventually they either run out of oil or people stop buying it.
Yeah, and that's what Spain should have done. But instead, they just kept on using the gold just for fighting wars, and it doesn't even end up well because their king is so bad at having children that he just dies childless, and then a French king takes the throne and everything. And it's like they wasted all that gold. Like if you look at the amount of wealth and the value of the total amount of gold they got in, I'd argue it's probably in the trillions of dollars, like over the span of all that time. Like it's definitely in the trillions of dollars, the amount of wealth they got from their colonies that they could have used to build up Spain. And instead, they just didn't. And they had crisis after crisis, both external and internal. And they got Dutch disease. They got way too full of themselves. Like, ooh, money, let's have an empire. When they should have gone, ooh, money, let's build up our nation, then have an empire. And they
Right.
immediately go in.
This is good for you, though. You can start looking at, oh, I need to start writing things for pay so I can be like, ooh, money, let me build myself up and invest in future gold bets.
Yeah.
So just so we're keeping this all on topic and not being a bunch of history notes for an hour.
Maybe I can.
Oh, it was more
start
than
my
an hour.
colonial empire.
Yeah. I'm being generous to myself. But yeah, I think this
It's probably
stuff is
closer to
interesting
2.
because I think it's interesting to look at like why are people successful? What were because there's
Because,
these
you
are,
think because they're German?
well, I think we look at obviously there are things that go well for Germanic people in some ways, right? And in
I'm
certain
not
periods of
liking
history.
the way this racialization is going. Like, just
it's-
learn to be more German.
No, but
Well, I
think like
I don't think it's even that.
Japan
Like you
has
could,
similar tendencies. Like
Yes.
Japan has similar tendencies to Germanic culture. It's not the culture
So
itself.
so it's
the
better to
German
look at the
things.
qualities and the characteristics, not necessarily the ancestry.
so I'll put
We're
it.
talking about
I'll,
culture.
I'll repeat what I said before.
But we're also
right?
talking about like the traits necessary for success. That's how the stream started, was how to be successful for everybody,
Right.
not just
Right.
Germans.
And I think it's interesting because, like I said before, most of my ancestry is not Germanic. Most of it is, in fact, Slavic, which is considered not similar culturally or in any way like that at all. And yet, I still feel like there are habits and behaviors that I have in common that go against what you would expect, based on what I'm told my ancestry primarily is. Right. So I'm thinking it is interesting what these traits are and what kind. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I'm hesitant
Why-
to tie them to ancestry because that
No.
limits their availability to the rest of us.
No, so
But
the
actually, a good
ancestry.
example is the Czech. Like the Czech, they are Slavic people, but they through centuries of integration with the Holy Roman Empire, they have adopted a lot of these German cultural practices, and they are today, I believe, the most prosperous Slavic country, like per capita. Maybe some of the Baltics are richer.
But if did the Japanese get them from Germany too?
No, but it's
So they're not like why ethnicize them instead of just like keep them as traits available to
we're not doing
humans?
that.
It just
We're looking
that's
at
what it
history.
sounds like. Like
through history.
these are the German traits you need to be successful because Germans are the most successful race. So
We're
if
trying to
you
understand what are their behaviors. What are these are learned behaviors.
and I'd rather focus on the individual. Like, what are the individual traits of successful people,
Well, there's
regardless
a
of their background?
big difference between what traits in a person is good for individual success and which traits are good for nationwide success.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. On this stream, I want to focus on this is a very individual-oriented stream, and so I'm trying to because
I'd say
there's
that-
so many varieties of individuals that show up here,
Yeah.
and so like this to extrapolate from the group traits, I don't know if that's something that is going to be helpful here.
Oh, so
Y'all can do it as an exercise, or
we're
Joe could do it
looking
on
at-
his channel.
we're
but-
looking at patterns, right? And it's ultimately individuals who made decisions that, like we talked about what Cortez did. Cortez decided these things on his own. He made the decisions. He was an individual that did what he did.
Right, and we don't know how much of it is because he was Spanish, and how much of it is because he was this quirky, unique individual.
it's a continuation of the Reconquista, like the whole spirit of Spain was very changed by the Reconquista. You have this eternal push for more and more crazies. Like they conquered all of Spain, and now they have these new lands to conquer. Like it's
Right.
definitely something to do with Spain in general.
And you'll notice, Jeff, like I've been tying it to Dopas. Like, so you're an individual, right? So it's like, how do you channel this side of you so that you make individual decisions, right? And so I think that's what people do. It's like when we look at culture, we're just looking at like sort of the, when people like sing together and they like harmonize to a single note, right? Well, you look at culture, you're kind of just hearing like, what is that harmonized note of what a bunch of individuals
And I'm
are
just
doing.
not sure how applicable that is to a channel set up for outliers, where you're not going to harmonize three of us, much less a group, a choir.
I
We're
will
never going to
add,
have an
though,
outliers choir.
If you want, we can talk about Odin, because in traditional Norse mythology, he is the god of the exceptional. He is the god for those who don't fit into society. Those who
Oh,
travel
well, then
beyond
maybe
the
there's
shores.
some Odin potential here. We get some Odin energy. But real
And,
quick, it is Cheesehead's birthday today, and he is about to start his birthday stream. I posted the link at the top. So if you're interested in going over to Cheesehead's and wishing him happy birthday, I might even stream some of it and see.
All right. Well, they're
So happy
closing
birthday,
down here.
Cheesehead.
They're closing down here, Jeff. So I need to get going. But yeah, it's been a good
They're
stream.
closing at 6 o'clock?
It's a coffee shop. They're not open until 10 or whatever. So yeah, I'm gonna head
Oh,
out. Dopas, this was interesting.
I've never heard of them
I
close
hope
at 6, though.
you picked some
On the-
things up
especially
from
on the
it,
weekends.
and it at least helped like give you some interesting framing for
Yeah.
things you want to do.
And of course, the discussion in general. I always love discussing history. Maybe I'll go by your stream tomorrow.
Oh, sure thing. Yeah.
Where are you? Is that your house?
Yeah. I
Oh,
look
you're in
forward
your
to
attic?
what you do. Anyway, I'm gonna hop out
I live
now,
in a
guys.
log
See you later.
cabin.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I love
bye.
nice ceiling. Oh, take care, Joe.
I think I'm also gonna head out because it's 12 a.m. now.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah.
Oh, I see
midnight.
how it is. I show up and everybody's fucking leaving.
No,
Fuck
I'm
y'all
here
too.
for another hour at least. You're good. We could talk about our album battle coming up.
I know.
Goodbye.
Take care, Dobas. Thanks a lot.
I've listened to Hair Nation literally all fucking day.
What's Hair
All day.
Nation?
That's on XM.
Oh, it's like
What?
a radio station that plays
Yeah,
hair
on
metal.
Yeah, on XM. That's what we have on the boat. So
Ah, sounds
that's what I
pretty
li-
cool.
I mean, we listen to fucking everything, but today it was on. It was on whatever. So.
You got inspired.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of fucking great songs. There is. There's a lot of great songs from that decade, from the '80s, from the late '70s, right until the fucking probably about '93. About '93. There was a lot of great fucking material put out by them guys, them band.
Yeah, that's the same period of music I would cover too. Late 70s to early 90s. That's the backbone of Gen X musical culture.
I mean, really, it's the backbone of all music. Really, you think about it. Like, I mean, you had like Sasquatch and shit like that. There, fucking, and all them guys that did the early blues players and shit like that. There, and you had Elvis and the Beatles. But really,
And the
it
Stones.
wasn't
Can't
until
forget
you
the
got the
Stones.
Stones and Zeppelin and
CCR.
yeah, Clearance Clearwater Revival, fucking Leonard Skinner,
Yeah.
30th Special. Uh, I mean,
The James Gang.
Black Sabbath, Metallica. I
Yeah.
mean, you think about all
AC/DC.
these AC/DC. You think about all these bands that had influence. Kiss, as far as money making, Kiss is probably the top band to make money. Because I mean,
Well,
genius.
yeah, maybe as far as money making. I don't know about quality though.
Well, at some point, look. There's nothing like a good Kiss song to get you going, though, sometimes. Like, I'm telling you, man, you get a good Kiss song that comes on the fucking radio, and, like, man.
What was their big? I don't even know if I would recognize a Kiss song. What was their famous hit?
I mean, you rock and roll all night
All day,
long.
we want to rock and roll all night. Something. See, I don't even know all the lyrics.
Well, I know, but Look, I know. I just know it when I hear it. Like half the time, I don't even know what the fucking name of the song is. I just know who sings it.
I don't listen to a lot of new music, Jeremy. I tend to listen to new albums by my old musicians. Like Pixies just put out a new album yesterday, and Manic Street
Somebody else just put one
Preachers
out
has
too.
one. The Cure has one coming out. Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth just put out an excellent, excellent solo album. Swans are going to come out with a new album, I think next year. So I just keep listening to the same updated music from my old favorites.
Dude, I like fucking. Have you listened to Mammoth?
No.
That's that's Wolfgang Van Halen. It's Eddie Van Halen's fucking son.
Oh, I almost picked 1984 to put up against Appetite, but I figured it would not be fair
Why? You
because I
could
think you
pick.
would lose.
You think so? I don't
Yes.
know. I mean, as I said, Appetite. Man, that's such a
It is hard.
good.
I'm serious. I had a really hard time coming up with a
I talked to.
competitor for it, and I'm still not sure I found one, but I'm gonna throw it in the ring anyway.
I mean, the guy that cut my hair there, he fucking. I asked him. I go, because he plays the bass guitar and shit, and I go, now you're into music and you played in bands. I go, can you tell off? I go, can you think of an album that's better than that? And he goes, honestly, no. Like it's
Tracy Chapman.
and when I say, well, yeah, when I say, I'm not saying every song is better than every other song out there. I'm just saying as a totality of an
Yeah,
album,
it's
it
a
is
good
by
album.
far one of the best albums ever produced,
For
hands
it,
down.
for good. It's like the last really good blues rock album before it all switched to grunge and other forms of
I don't know. The
rock.
best blues album I think is Aerosmith's "Honkin' on Bobo." That's
I didn't
fuck.
even think about Aerosmith because they had an album about that time too. Why didn't I pick
Yeah,
that
but
one?
'80s Aerosmith kind of sucked. That late '80s into the fucking '90s,
You think so?
really.
What's let's
Well, because
see.
they did. When did they
Permanent
do the?
Vacation, is that the one?
When did they do the Run DMC collab? When was that? Was that
That was
80?
86 was when Run came out, and then Permanent Vacation came out in 87.
Yeah.
And that was the one that came out the same time as Guns N' Roses. But you think the Guns N' Roses album is better?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like Aerosmith too, man,
Yeah, I didn't even think about that one. I went
it's
with
just so
Ministry.
hard to pick something.
Yeah. The one critique I have so far is stylistically the songs sound very similar. It's like one style, but that's the same critique you can make about the album I picked too. So I think it's going to be a wash there.
I mean, almost all albums have a distinct uh uh sound to them.
But sometimes there's more variety between the individual songs.
That's true. I mean,
And I think some of the songs on Appetite stand out from the others, but I think a lot of them kind of just blend together. And it's going to take a few listens to. And by the way, are we ranking the songs on both albums, or are you only ranking the songs on your album, and then I rank the ones on mine, or do we
I was
both?
gonna rank them on both. Like what
Okay,
if the however many songs there are, try to rank them, compare like which one
well,
I put and compare them. Like you know what I mean? I'm gonna have the number one song,
okay,
my
that
number
sounds
one.
good. Appetite has 12 and Ministry has 11, so that's about the same
That's
amount
good. So I'll just figure out which one out of Appetite to leave out.
to throw out.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
well,
I think
good.
it'll
I'm
be
looking
good.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Big
what you got
steps
going on this
today.
weekend? Huh?
Big steps today. I let my teenage girls had to babysit my 4-year-old for the first time. They had to watch the baby sister where their mother and me went to work. I guess it was success.
Oh, you left it by themselves?
Mm-hmm. That's the first time. They're
Oh,
gonna be 15 and 14. If they can't
yeah.
watch
We
their
were. Oh my
fucking
God, we were staying by ourselves way
as
before
I've
that.
said, if they can't watch their I mean, by the time really by the time the baby I say baby, but she's 4. By the time she woke up, and all that. And by the time my wife got home, really they were only with her for 4 hours.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't bad, but I was proud of them, I guess. I
I
told him
guess.
I go, I didn't care what the house looked like as long
Yeah.
as the kid didn't get hurt.
What did you and your wife do
What do you mean? What did we do?
today?
We went to work.
Oh, it was just to go to work.
Yeah.
So you work. You
My
were out
parents
on the boat.
my parents usually take her on the weekends, but they've started the wreath season's going. So my dad's over at the wreath factory, and my mother's there year round.
What factory?
But the wreath factory, the wreath. You ever heard of Wreaths Across America?
Wreath, like a Christmas wreath?
Yeah,
No.
Wreaths Across America. They take and go and they have a big convoy every year right around Christmas, and they're the ones that goes and puts all them wreaths that get put on Ireland National Cemetery and all these
Oh
national cemeteries.
wow.
It's all from that. And there's a big convoy, and they leave here, and like law enforcement, right from the state of Maine, right down, will escort them like at state lines. Like so, when they get to Maine, the Maine line, the New Hampshire state police will take over. And then once they get through New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, so such and such, right till you get right to uh Arlington. And then they
Wow. And do they only make them in Maine, or they make them all over?
no, I think the Reach Across America is just in Maine, just in this area.
Maine to Arlington.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That would be a great job to have.
So that's what my parents work over there at that factory. So
Well,
in this time of year, they do.
That's like a job you could be proud of.
Yeah, my mother, well, that's fucking, she makes because them red bows that you see on them, them red
Yeah.
velvet bows that's on them. My mother makes them. Her and a couple other ladies, they have the jig and they fold them and tie them.
Wow.
Dude, that shit's fucking bad for you. Like, dude, my mother's red. Like when she comes home,
Like
like
permanently?
like red. Well, I mean, no. I mean, once you take a fucking shower, it comes off.
Oh, but she
But
comes
like
home red.
but like it. But I think about it. You're breathing all that shit the fuck in.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? All that.
Do they have to wear masks?
No, they don't have to. I tell my mother she should.
Huh.
The other ladies do, but my mother don't. She goes, I can't fucking breathe in them.
She talks just like you.
My
Well, what
dad
do you
don't.
have the rest of the night?
Well, my kids and my wife's out doing trunk and treats. Because, they don't do trick or treating anymore. It's all trunk and treats.
Oh, they do it on the weekend?
Yeah, have you ever heard of trunk and treats?
Yeah, but usually they do it on Halloween.
Well, here, everybody, it seems like the weekend before and the weekend of, they're fucking everywhere.
Ah, okay.
Like, you don't even go trick or treating anymore.
I know. That's
Weird.
one of my favorite things to do was to pass out candy, and they don't even come to houses anymore.
That's been a dying art for a long time. Shit, last time I truly went trick or treating, I was in college. I mean, I was in the Air Force too, but I was going to college,
Oh, that's so
and
cool.
a bunch of us decided we were gonna fucking go out trick or treating. And holy fuck, I was the driver, right? Like I remember, I'll never forget this. There was this girl, her name was Daisy, right? And I had the fucking hots for Daisy. Tell you what, she was dressed like a 1920s cocktail waitress. Well, I stayed in the car because, like, where we were, I had to keep moving up. So I just stayed in the car. Well, she dropped something, bent right the fuck over, right in front of the fucking car, right? She just got fucking black leggings on underneath them, like, fucking whatever the hell not even leggings, like, fucking pantyhose, whatever,
You
right?
saw the vajay?
Dude, fucking, she bent right the fuck over, dude. I tell you what, that was the prettiest fucking moon I've ever seen in my life.
Still remember it.
Still remember it. Needless to say, I didn't get to touch it, but no.
Well,
Yeah.
it looks like it's Cheesehead's birthday today. He's doing a stream now.
Cheesehead's birthday.
Yeah, I'll post the link again.
Cheesehead's birthday.
Happy birthday, Cheese! I'm sending people over to your channel. Hope you. Oh wow, 44 people already. Cool. Big Jake and Cheesehead,
But
and the
the
cock
biggest
bag.
thing is half out of the 45 that's there, probably only 25 to 30 is really people, and the other ones are all sock accounts.
They all have wrenches too, except for
Huh?
Abe. Said they all have wrenches except for Abe and Barbara Knight.
I don't know if I have a wrench over there or not anymore. I did, but I don't know since I got my new one if I've got it back. I think I have.
Looks like that's where the party's gonna be.
Cheesehead. No, it ain't Cheesehead. That's Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron.
Aaron, according
Chicken
to.
Man Cheese, he calls himself.
Yep. We had 2,107 pounds of lobsters today.
Wow, just from today?
Yeah. Dude, we stuffed the tank and then we had 5 crates outside of the tank.
Dang.
Plus we had 4 crates of crab that we
Wow.
kept. We could have kept way more than that.
Do you work on commission or you get a flat rate no matter how much you catch?
No, I get a percentage.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I think it's like honestly, I don't know. I think I make 14%. It might be a little bit more, but I think it's 14. I think I get paid 14 and I think he pays Jordan either 16 or 17. I think. Because I know he pays because Jordan's been with him longer. So Jordan gets a little bit more. It wasn't bad. I mean, that was $1,300 in my pocket today, so I can't complain.
Dang. Hey, Ricardo. Um, oh, I wonder if I
But
should release those memberships. Now, Leggy, do you have a membership here?
no, that's why I gave you the $2.99 last night, motherfucker.
Okay,
Because I
do
can't
you
do it.
have your
Okay,
settings where you can
so
receive?
listen.
Because I'm going to release 5 free memberships. So if your
Well, yeah,
settings are open,
yeah. I mean, it's on. I should get it, but uh, uh, I can't. So on my iPhone, I can buy shit and purchase shit, whatever. But when I log into my email, which is this account, which is my old college account, so that just shows you how long I've had this fucking email address that this one's latched to. Uh, for some reason, because it's technically a school email address through Google, for some reason though it doesn't give me permission to use Google Pay. But on my phone, through like YouTube, I can buy shit through my iPhone on YouTube if it lets me. It's fucking weird. So I can do it through the iPhone, but I can't do it if I log because I use my kid's the fuck did I use? My kid's computer, and it showed me the option, and then when I go to do it, it fucking nope.
oh, well, you think you have it set now to receive memberships?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to try this then. Let's see. I was waiting till we had more people, but
I
it'll
don't have
still.
to chat, do I? Do I have to
Jeremy, you
chat?
don't have a membership either. Do you have yours set? I want to see if it gives everybody in the chat memberships. We were trying to get it to Ricardo, but we can't figure out how to get his settings
See, I
right.
thought. See, there should be a way that you go. Fuck, there's a link that you can share that will allow that you can put in that will go to that thing that will. Cause who the fuck does it? Emily D. Baker will do it. She'll tell you how to do it. Her and there's somebody else.
All right, I'm going to release them now. There's 5 memberships dropping right now. Let's see who gets them. Hopefully you get one of them. No.
No, because it'll be random. So it'll
Right,
be
but I thought it like prioritized people that were here in the chat.
no. I think it's anybody that's because man, you know how many times like I've come back and like there's a guy named D9, right? He does music and shit on here. I haven't been to one of his streams in fucking. Well, I haven't been to one of his. I'm subscribed on this account, but I haven't been to one of his streams in probably well since I reactivated this account and shit. And I had one given to me the other day. So
Well, maybe I'll buy a few memberships. I wish there was a way I could assign them directly to people. But I want to check I want to see, let's see.
I thought once you see, I thought once you did it right, you gifted the membership. I figured I always thought YouTube prompted you, gave you a prompt that says if you wanted to receive them, you gotta make sure it's on in your settings.
Yeah, you do have to
Because you
make
go to the
sure.
settings, but then you should be able to click that little fucking disclaimer and bring it in. I feel.
That's why I asked if yours was on, your setting.
Yeah, I know it's on.
Oh, it is on? Okay.
Yeah, I know it's on.
And it looks like I've only been doing this. This is the third month of membership, so there's only a few 2-monthers. Hank, the Freak, Chuck, Peace, Love, Smile, Shameless, Mr. B, King
Look,
Philip,
I would be a 2 month member, but
KD,
I can't get in.
Amateur Aquatic Addiction, Discussion Salon, Alanize, Kid Woe, and Ladybug. Those are our. They've been members since I've been monetized. Ricardo, I think it's your account. Damn. I need to find a way to get memberships to my people.
You see this?
Yeah, Ladybug. Ale8. Is that Maine
Dude,
beer?
no, it's a
Oh, it's a
fucking
soft drink. Like ginger
yeah,
ale?
yeah,
Oh,
dude.
okay.
I
Is that a
bought
glass bottle?
yeah.
I
So
love glass bottles.
so
1926.
yeah. So when I went into one of the stores here, right? And I go in there and I see they got these sodas over there, right? And I just never really walked over there to look at them. Well, yesterday I was sitting there looking at them. I go, holy fuck! I go, these are sodas from like different bottling companies, like mom and pop shops throughout the country. Dude, I got this and I got a green apple soda. It was fucking some of the best soda I've had in a long,
Oh, I've
long.
never heard of green apple soda. That sounds good.
Oh, dude, when I was in tech school going through and shit, and I was in Mississippi, I had mom send me because we have a particular brand of potato chips, Humpty Dumpty. They're fucking fantastic. Well, used to be fantastic.
Is
Well,
it
I had
the
mom.
kettle fried, like the thick cut fried
No,
ones?
no, just Humpty Dumpty. They had a main plant and they had a Canadian plant, and then the main plant was good. The Canadian plant sucked. But now it's owned 100% in Canada, manufactured in Canada, and they fucking suck. Like the salt and vinegar, dude. The salt and vinegar used to like make you pucker so bad, like it wasn't even funny.
Oh, I
The
love salt and vinegar.
the the barbecue used to be so like used to have that barbecue taste to it to the point where you would have sweat come on your brow. Like I'm
Ooh.
dead serious. This is how they used to be. Now the the salt and vinegar taste more plain than they do anything. Like a light salted chip. Uh, the barbecue just fucking overly salty. Like
And this is
sometimes you
from
just
Canada. This is after Canada got a hold of it.
yeah. Yeah, I
They
mean
yeah.
Canada's brand
They ruin
the one
everything.
you
They don't have the
always
American
knew
palate.
look, you always knew when you got a bag of chips that was manufactured in the Canadian plant versus the main plant.
Maybe that's why they're so miserable. Their food sucks.
I don't know. They did give us poutine though. So I
Oh, I've
mean
never had it.
what?
No.
Jeff. Jeff. Gravy. You've never
It's
had
French fries with
gravy
gravy
cheese
on it,
fries.
right?
You've never had gravy. Now, real poutine is with brown gravy. Me personally, I say like chicken or turkey gravy is the best.
Oh, I think they have it up here at some of the places. I just have to look for it. Look at Not Loss and his cope. Not Loss, if you're ever in the States, I'll buy you some real American food and you can see the difference. You can see what you're missing. If you can handle it, if your mental health can handle it.
I don't know, but chocolate. I rather have chocolate. Hey, where's the biggest export? What country has the biggest uh economy based on chocolate?
Not Switzerland.
Not Switzerland.
Um, uh, oh, probably somewhere in South America, huh?
No. Try
The
again.
U.S.
Nope.
Hershey,
Try again.
Pennsylvania.
Try again.
Don't tell me Canada.
Nope. Africa.
I was about to say, is it in? I was about to
There's
say, can we rule out Africa at least? So it's Africa,
Yeah, it's where the hell?
the
Now,
chocolate
now,
continent.
because I was just watching Expedition Unknown, and he was at this place, and he goes, "Little surprising fact, they're known for their chocolate. They're the world's." It was like they got their economy based solely. Fuck. Now I can't think of what the hell it was called, where it was called, but it was in Africa. It's like some of the finest chocolate in the fucking world comes from here.
Let's see.
Hold
Because I know they have like special chocolate now that's earth friendly or people friendly or something. So people are trying to buy the woke chocolate. So the list I'm
After
looking at says Germany, Belgium, Poland, Italy, and Netherlands are the top 5, followed by Canada, followed by United States. So Canada beats us slightly on chocolate. Not to North Americans, not to white people. It's just Africa. But yes, you're right. It is a continent, not a country. German chocolate. Why didn't I think of that?
No.
Because
West Africa produces 70% of the world's cocoa beans. West
oh, maybe
Africa.
cocoa bean then, not the
Yeah.
chocolate itself.
But they're known for chocolate though. City, country, whatever, they're known for chocolate. Like that's what they're known for. Like it's like the finest chocolate, considered the finest chocolate in the world. Like some of the most expensive chocolate in the world.
Godiva. Let's see which African countries. Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, Uganda.
It's coat
The
coat
Ivory Coast is by
coat
far
di-
the largest cocoa producing country in
yeah.
Africa and the world, supplying over 30% of the world's cocoa beans.
It's Cote d'Ivoire or whatever.
Yep, Ivory.
D'Ivoire
That's the Ivory Coast.
on the but it's in the Ivory Coast. Yeah,
Wow, no, I did not know that.
know that
Wow.
until because I was like, no fucking way. Because me when I think of cocoa bean, I think of like fucking Brazil,
Yeah, so I do too. I
Colombia.
think it's
Same
South
thing with
America.
coffee. Same thing with coffee.
Hmm. Juan Carlos. Or
Ah,
Don Juan, whatever that little man's name was.
do you ever? What the fuck is it? Like this bean, and it's like these coffee beans. If it's ate and shit out by this fucking animal,
Oh, yes!
what the hell?
Yes, okay, I've heard that before. Let's see.
Because it does something and, like
Yes.
it breaks it down and like gives it a.
Um,
Jeff, did you at court today? You look
Civets.
like
Civet. Partially digested coffee cherries, which have been eaten and defecated by the Asian palm civet, and they're fermented as they pass through the animal's intestines. Uh-oh, I think we lost you, Leggy.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay. What were you gonna
I'm
say?
here. Oh, I was asking you. I go, were you? Did you have court today or something? Of course, it is Saturday, but
No, me and Joe were trying our new series of how to take the community to the next level, and I thought I would just dress up for that. It makes me look more German, I think. More
you
I'm trying to be
fucking
accepted by
clout
the white
heel.
people. I'm learning how to code switch. Well, it's called coffee cherries. Whatever happens inside the animal, they call it coffee cherries. I didn't really delve deeper than that. Pardon the pun. The coffee bean is the seed, and the pit inside the red and purple fruit is the coffee. It's the coffee bean, but the fruit itself is called the coffee cherry. And so the civets eat the coffee cherry, and then they shit out the bean, I guess, after that, and then people lap it up. Oh, are you all these I didn't know we had all these No wonder I struggle. I think after hearing the two of them talk today, I'm pretty
Oh,
sure it's Scandinavian Germanic culture that I struggle with, and there's a lot of that up here. It's that very structured, conformist, efficient, don't talk, don't have feelings, get things. It's a robot culture. I've called the people up here white robot. It's like a city full of white robots. And if you try to have any kind of human moment with them at all, they glare at you and give you stink eye. And they
nah, you
think you're
just gotta.
mentally ill.
I get. Where are you? I'm just curious. Oh, I mean, I
I'm in
guess you can't
Washington
tell.
State.
You're in Washington
You know,
State.
Provo was up here last night
Okay,
hanging out at Twin Peaks.
are you close? Do you know where Everett, Washington is?
I do. I know where Everett, Washington is. I'm sitting in it right now.
Okay, so they're on Live PD, like they're a police department that Live PD follows. Y'all
What's Live
fucking
PD?
on patrol Live
Oh, it's
PD,
a
whatever.
YouTuber?
No, it's a TV show. They follows the police around. It used to be on
Live.
A&E, but then when the George Floyd shit happened, and then there was something that happened with one of the sheriffs from Texas on the show.
Oh,
That, that
cops used to do that too. They were constantly filming in Washington State. To
but
Pierce
anyways,
County.
they film in Everett, right? They film in Everett, and I tell
Maybe
you
I can
what.
go be on their
Dude,
show.
there's a fucking cop. He has a fucking beard, right? He's kind of like a good old boy. I tell you what, if he ever stopped me for riding a fucking bike, because riding a bike is like riding a is the same
You talking
law
about a
as your car, right?
motorbike?
No, he's riding a bicycle, and this motherfucker
What? Let
did
me look him
not.
up. I'll try to go find him.
What? Listen. So he fucking uh he stops this guy because he didn't use a turn signal, like a hand signal, to make a right hand turn. That was his probable cause to stop the guy on a bike. How
Yeah,
many
you're supposed to.
people?
I learned that was the basics of riding bikes is signaling with your
Well,
hand. Like,
yeah,
I think it's this way if you're going left, this way if you're going right.
if
I
you're
learned that as a
riding in the
kid.
middle of fucking traffic, not if you're fucking going down the fucking sidewalk.
You're not supposed to. Well, I don't know what the legalities of riding on the sidewalk is here, but I know it's discouraged. I think it's
All I
legal, but you
know,
can.
all I know is that's a fucking bullshit excuse to pull over. And the man was definitely a man of color. That's all I'm saying. It was a
The
bullshit.
bicyclist was?
Yes, I'm just
Maybe it was
saying. If in
racism.
that instance, I feel like if it was a white dude like me or you riding down the road, or maybe not you, I don't know. You say they look at you weird, so maybe they out you. But a dude like me riding down the road. They'd probably just let it be. But it was a black dude. I was just sitting there watching. I go, now ain't that some fucking shit? Give this dude a fucking, and then give him a hair at a time because he didn't have an ID on him. He goes, what do I need to give you an ID for? He goes, well, this is a traffic stop. He goes, how is this a traffic stop? I'm on a bicycle.
That's a vehicle. Bicycles are supposed to obey the rules of the road just like everybody else. And
I
there's a big
understand that,
rivalry up
but
here between
there's
drivers
no
and
law that
cyclists.
states that you must present a fucking ID or a driver's license to be on a bike. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
I was always taught that have your ID anywhere you go in public, even if it's a pedestrian, because you
I
can be
never had
asked
my
for it at any
ID.
time.
It almost fucked up on me the other day. Backfired on me. I went to the bank to cash my check. I'm in the fucking bank like three times a week, and so they all know me. Fuck, the guy I work on the boat, his aunt works at the bank. So, anyways, I get there and they go, you got your ID on you? I go, no. I go, what the hell do you need that for?
You don't carry your ID?
No, fuck no.
What? That's so
Dude,
bait. That's the first thing I leave my house with. I don't even walk out of my
no. The only
house if I
time
don't
I
have my
take my
ID on
ID
me.
with me is if I know I'm for a fact I'm going to a
What?
bar
That's
or I'm going
crazy.
to the
You don't have it in your wallet?
Dude, I don't even carry a wallet with me. Dude, I haven't carried a wallet in probably fucking 10 years.
Okay. Well, now we're getting somewhere. It's starting to make
Dude, I
sense.
literally take all the contents from my pocket, right? So what I'll do, I'll take unless they're my pants I had on for the day, then I carry nothing, like my work pants on the boat. I carry nothing in my pockets then. But like my pants if I'm out every day, whatever, got jeans on, accumulate shit in the pocket. What I'll do is I'll take my jeans off, I'll fold them up, put them on the back of like the couch or whatever, right? I'll get up in the morning, put my new pants on, go over, get all the contents out of the other pocket, you know, organize my money, count, see what I got for money in my pocket, take the receipts, throw them out, take the change, walk over and throw that into whatever container we're putting change in that week, and yeah, then take my dirty pants, put them in the wash machine.
Okay.
Yeah.
The the only time I never used a wallet was when I didn't have anything to put in it. But the minute I got IDs and debit cards and money and stuff, I started carrying a wallet. Sometimes I would leave the house with just the ID and the debit card and the cash and put it in my
No,
pocket.
I'll
But
be honest. I stopped carrying a wallet because I got tired of forgetting my wallet in my pants and then my wife grabbing them and doing laundry and not checking the pockets. So when you go through about four wallets in
oh,
a year's time, and yeah, it's like, fuck it.
yeah, shameless. We talked about that. I didn't understand what order had to do with emotion because you can have order and still have emotions. Like I don't understand why having an emotion disrupts order.
What?
And I
What's
don't know if
order?
they
I'm
really explained
confused.
it either.
What is she talking about? I'm confused.
That German people like order and structure and efficiency and they show no emotion, but I don't understand why you can't have all of that and still have emotion. Like I don't understand what emotion has to do with any of that because there's plenty of like I
Well, it
can have
depends on
order,
what type of emotion you're talking about.
any emotion. You know how
Because
Joe is
listen,
poker faced?
and it depends on what you're doing. Because if you, some emotion, depending on what you're doing, can give tells. Like, you get my point? Like, if you're in a
No.
stressful situation, you don't want the other person knowing that you're stressed the fuck out.
I
Like,
don't
you
mind
want
if
to
they know. If I'm trying to be authentic, and I want them,
look. If we're
I
in a
would,
stressful situation and
because
you're
that's
that one
masking.
person, stressing out, me and you's probably gonna go rounds. I'm not gonna lie.
Why would
I
we
tell
go
my wife
round?
all the
You would
time, I
punch
love you to
down on
death,
somebody who's stressing out.
but my wife, I tell her in a stressful situation, she's the last person I want because she does not handle stressful situations well.
But Leggy, you're an emotional, passionate guy yourself.
Yeah, but I get it. But I also, in a time of crisis and shit, and in a stressful situation, I usually, for the most part, can keep my cool.
I mean, I work in crisis. I think I handle crisis very well, but it not it. I don't ever. It's not at the expense of my emotions.
Well, look, I'll play a little scenario for you. When I moved to Jonesport here 6 years ago. I mean, I knew a few people already in town, like one of my closest friends and shit, and the guy I work for, like I knew them, but I didn't know really anybody else in town yet. Well, me and the wife, we went and dropped the guy that I worked with on the boat at the time. I dropped him off at another friend's house, and we went inside. And me and her, we smoked a joint and all that. Well, we pull out. and leave. And I was like, well, we gotta go and shit. And we pull out, and I see these fucking lights, right? I'm like, wow, that guy's humming along pretty well. Well, I got to the top of what's called Hall's Hill. I got top of Hall's Hill, and down yonder's the town line between Addison and Jonesport. Well, I could see him. I could see him down there in the Indian River. I could see him right there going across. Well, next time I see him, I look to my left, and I looked over, and I go, huh? I go, them lights ain't supposed to be there. I go, I know damn well there's not a house there. So I backed up. Sure enough, that truck was on its side. Right? In the woods. Fucking dude. Had I not stopped at that time, I don't think anybody would have known he was up in the woods. Only reason I stopped because I was coming. As I said, I was top of Hall's Hill. He was down through. So just as he was losing control and rolling into the woods, is when I had caught up to him. So like I was seeing like the snow because it was just a small dusting of snow on the ground. I see that snow settling. What I see for light was the truck rolling in the woods. That's what caught my eye.
Oh,
So the truck was almost identical to my friend that I worked on the boat with at the time. So I thought it was like my best friend, right? Fucking absolute pause. The only difference was my friend's truck was a GMC and this was a Chevy. I'd never been so happy to see a Chevy bow tie in my life at that particular time. Well, meantime, my wife had done called 911. Well, this guy had come too. Dude, never met him a day in my life. Very respected man. Held the record for the fastest boat for the longest time. Lobster boat for the longest time. Uh anyways, never met the man, never seen his face before. I go to look in the truck. All I could see was a lacrosse boot, rubber boot, turned sideways, and what appeared to be a pair of.
oh, you might have cut out.
Hello?
Yep,
Can you hear
I can
me?
hear you now. Yeah,
Ah, shit. Can you hear me?
yep.
Yeah?
Can you
Because
hear
I
me?
can't hear you.
Oh,
If
you
you
can't
can
hear
hear
me?
me, give me a thumbs up.
Uh, thumbs up.
Okay. So finish. I'll finish story. I can't hear you, but I'll finish my story. Uh, see the guy. See what I thought was a pair of his fucking Carhartt pants. I hear a voice. Please help me. I don't want to die. Please help me. I don't want to die. Never met a man in my life. And there was I tell my wife, there was an old ringtone that people used to have, and it was like, "Let me out of your pocket. I'm stuck in your pocket. Let me out." That's the voice I got stuck in my fucking head. Is that voice? So yeah, it's a very
To me, that would bring up some
odd thing.
emotion.
I don't even know how I got on this and where I was going with it
We were
either
talking about
now, but
emotion. Are you talking
yeah.
about panic? Like
But
don't
hold on, I
panic
got
in a
to
crisis?
refresh
That's
this.
that's a specific emotion. That's more like a physiological reaction. Although all emotions are physiological. I don't know. I'll have to do this as a stream soon about emotions because I don't get it. Maybe it's part of my own culture. But the Italians that come on here seem to have strong, passionate emotions and it not be a big deal. So maybe it is a German thing. They said the Germans, the Japanese, the Asians, and German meaning Germanic, like Scandinavian, all of the Germanic people. So I think it's just cultural. I've said that over and over and over. All right, since you can't hear me, I have something to do in about 15 minutes anyway, so I guess I'll wind the stream down. Everybody can go over to Cheeseheads. It's his birthday. It looks like the whole Panelverse is hanging out there right now. So go wish him a happy birthday. And we'll be watching stuff in the Discord later tonight. Feel free to drop in. If not, I'll either be out tonight sometime or tomorrow, of course. So I will see everyone then. And thanks for hanging out as usual. The The holding back, because Shameless, you seem like you show emotion. I've seen you show emotion before. I trust people that show emotion because they seem human. I do not trust people that act like robots. I just don't. It's that transparency creates trust thing versus masking and hiding and putting a face that's different from what's going on behind the face. I just don't trust that. Uh, so that's we'll have to talk about it. This maybe the next stream we'll do this as a topic. All right, that's it for me. I'm gonna run off to go to this next thing, and then I'll be in the Discord watching stuff. So I'll catch everyone then, and then probably be out later tonight. There we go. Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. See you soon.